Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Irvin Cateman.
I'm Sierra Overmark.
And I'm Aurelia Lieb. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome back one of our greatest guest hosts. Hello, Karoline.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy to be back.
Not that I'm at all biased at all. There might be a little bit of a German connection.
Maybe.
So even though I'm sure everyone remembers you, would you mind reminding listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Well, as Aureo just said, I'm also from Germany. I am a Ravenclaw. My favorite book is the sixth one. And
because you are a lady of taste and refinement.
Yes, the best book.
Yes.
My journey to Potter, I'm not sure what exactly I said last time, what I told you, but it was basically, I think I was always, as a kid, kind of into witches and as you are as a little girl. And I remember my friend who I was also always playing as witches and playing dress up. She had, I don't know what it was, but some kind of equipment, witches equipment. And I asked her where she'd got that from. And she said Winkelgasse, which is German for diagon alley. And I was like, where's that place? And she pretended it was somewhere I could go to. Which obviously wasn't the case. And a couple of months later, my parents bought the book. And I hated the first chapter, as I think many kids do at that age. And then I loved the rest of it. And even though I had a bit of trouble with all of the characters, I remember the name McGonagall was just that person in my head because the name was just too complicated for me. And my favorite characters, I kind of have three. I love the character of Snape, the character, not Snape himself. I love Lupin and, always Hermione. Yeah,
so that's quite a spread of characters.
Yeah, they're all interesting in kind of their own way.
Oh, definitely.
So what I'm hearing is we need to have you on for some Prisoner of Azkaban chapters.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Noted. And we are so glad to have you with us for this episode.
Yes, and this episode today, for episode number 42, we have gathered to discuss the 22nd chapter of the Harry Potter series, which is Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 5, The Whomping Willow. We encourage you to read the chapter before listening, but we're not your mom.
Guys, isn't it wild to think that the day after this episode comes out, that is 22 years since the events of this chapter?
Wow.
Oh, I feel old.
I don't like that at all.
Think about that.
No, thank you.
It's 22 years since the 22nd chapter. Oh.
No.
Well, before we get into that chapter, as we all sit with our feelings of aging, I want to give a huge thanks to Christian Richardson over on Patreon, who bought us this round of drinks at the pub.
Yay!
Thank you, Christian.
Thanks so much, Christian. Listeners, if you'd like to buy us around at the pub, please head on over to patreon.com/3broomsticks, that's with the numeral 3, to sign up. We're offering a ton of bonus content. You can chat with the host, you can get on-episode shout-outs like this, you can listen to me and Sophia talk about how we throw Harry Potter parties. The answer is with style.
Yeah, well, you can listen to Sam's fanfiction, which definitely did not end on a cliffhanger, and I've definitely not been buggering about him. I'm like, tell me how it's going on. He's like, you have to wait. I was like, I don't want to wait.
Aureo, because I haven't listened to the fanfic yet, how dirty is it?
It's not at all.
Oh.
So disappointed.
Well, not yet.
Well, anyway, even if our fanfics aren't as dirty as some listeners might like, there's lots of good Patreon content, so we'd really appreciate your help in keeping the lights on at the Three Broomsticks, so we can talk about Harry Potter for a long time to come.
And let us now raise a toast to the comments on episode 39. This episode was Law and Order in the Wizarding World. And we raise our glass to commenter Almost a Squib, who said, regarding the point of snapped wands, it is interesting that Hagrid has to conceal his snapped wand in an umbrella even after he is proven innocent, while Newt Scamander, who also got expelled, can use it freely. What comes before and after this comment is a very wonderful, rousing discussion. Seriously, go read it. Irvin, you are a big part of the discussion going on, but I think this is maybe the most comments we've had on an episode, potentially. I was trying to look and count, but I didn't want to go through all 39 episodes. Sorry for being slightly lazy, but there was a lot of discussion, and the comments are not short. So, there's a lot to talk about.
Discussion on that episode.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. But yeah, specifically on this topic with snapped wands, what are your guys' thoughts? There was a couple of potential things that I found and that maybe had been posed, but I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were on this.
I always thought there was definitely a little bit of a racial bias with Hagrid specifically.
Yeah, that might be true.
Whereas I thought that it was more a legal thing. So I posted this in the comment, but basically, we don't know that Hagrid was ever pardoned for opening the Chamber of Secrets in the 1940s. Like, Harry and Dumbledore think he's innocent, but, they're not the ones in charge. So Hagrid is exonerated of opening the chamber in the 1990s, but I don't know that they, Fudge and the Ministry ever revisit the 1940s incident. So as far as we know, Hagrid is, still expelled, and that conviction hasn't been vacated.
Oh yeah, I guess I forgot the part of where the Ministry is also very inefficient and not well operating.
Mm-hmm.
And also racially biased, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably.
Well, and also timeline-wise, right? Because Newt was expelled in the 1920s, so even if we lend credibility to the Fantastic Beasts movies, which, we don't, it could be that the rules for expelled students were different in the 20s versus the 40s.
True. I also thought there was possibly just an age component because Newt was 16 or 17 because it was during his 6th year, whereas Hagrid was 13. So from a legality of being a wizard standpoint, Newt was either right next to being of age or was of age, whereas Hagrid was not. So there could also be that kind of component where it's you have learned enough that we'll let you kind of fudge it to the end, or no, we can't possibly catch you up on 4 years without you actually attending school, so you're out.
And also, does expulsion always mean that the wand is snapped? Or are those two separate things?
I don't know that we have enough of a case study on that, because there aren't too many mentions of people actually getting expelled or actually having their wands snapped or both or anything like that. Because my thought was, why couldn't Hagrid, okay, if he gets expelled at this school, why can't he go to Durmstrang or something like that? Why can't he go to a different school? Why does that mean that he's completely not allowed to use magic anymore? That seems more I went to prison for this thing, now I'm not allowed to use magic, not I got expelled from school. Because in real life, you can get expelled from a school and just go to another school.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking too. You can get expelled for doing something stupid at the school, but Hagrid allegedly killed someone, and that then has nothing or not much to do with the school. But as far as I know, Newt didn't kill anyone. and maybe he just did something that got him expelled, but not got him his wand taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, I think sort of the analogy would be that Hagrid is, like, out on probation and, like, theoretically could be locked up for actually killing people.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a bit interesting because, I know it's different country by country, but I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK. I want to say yes, but definitely in Germany I think if you're under 14, potentially under 16, you almost legally need to be in school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting because Hagrid would have been, 13, 14?
Mm-hmm.
But again, 1940s.
Yeah.
Like, Aureo, was that the case 80 years ago? Because I have my doubts.
Well,
it was actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, Germany had that for a long time. But I think if someone murders a child,
I don't know that we did.
Then there might be special rules for them not being able to get back to school, and maybe they're not tried as a child, but as an adult, and then.
It's just interesting that obviously because he didn't go to prison.
Right. So maybe it's just the severity.
Yeah.
Well, because I know that Dumbledore lobbied on behalf of both of them, both Hagrid and Newt. And so maybe because Hagrid was accused of something much more severe, then Dumbledore was basically able to talk him out of prison or harsher consequences outside of the school system. Whereas with Newt, all he had to do was just make sure that he didn't get his wand snapped.
I think with Newt, it's potentially similar to, what Fred and George do. They're essentially...
Right.
I mean, it's different. The school doesn't decide they have to leave, but I guess the school would have decided at that point anyway that they had to leave. And nothing happens to them. I mean, I think they're already 17 at that point, so...
Yeah, they are. Yeah, so I guess it kind of also just depends on when during his year, is he an older student? Is he, because his birthday's in February. So he wouldn't turn 17 until February of his 6th year. So if this incident happened after that, then he's an adult and maybe wouldn't get his wand snapped because of that. But if it happened before that, then...
But we can assume it happened after that because usually things tend to happen at the end of school year.
That's fair. Also because I'm sure that you can learn apparition outside of the class that they have you take in school. Cause I'm sure Harry knows how to apparate by now, even though he didn't take the test because he wasn't old enough, but he can apparate. And that would have happened at the very end of that year. So, there's not a whole lot of, wiggle room if you're going by that timeline, but I'm sure he could have just learned it separately.
Also, mandatory school attendance in the U.S. was passed in 1918, which was way earlier than I thought. So, yep, I stand corrected. Also, I learned something, and we're only, 14 minutes in.
1918 is interesting year as well because that's the end of World War One.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Basically, there was a whole Americanization movement, trying to assimilate immigrants into American culture. And they're like, how do we do that? Send them all to school with American kids. Mm-hmm. Because individual states were trying to pass mandatory attendance, and there were court battles, and the Supreme Court was striking it down and all that. And then, in the 1910s, they're like, actually, what if we did this? So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I still think breaking someone's wand seems like a weird form of punishment, but...
Yeah, because there's really, it's just... Do we hear of any other people, being punished by having their wands snapped? I don't quite... remember if we do. I've read it in fan fictions, but that's about it.
No, it doesn't
with Harry that they said we'll take your wand away in Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah, they do threaten it. Yeah,
they threaten it. Yeah, but it doesn't.
Yeah,
actually
they don't do it, but they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is so
So
interesting.
it seems to be, but I know Irvin and I discussed this on the episode as well, where we're like, it's a logistical nightmare because you need to tell all the wand makers, if this person rocks up, don't sell them a wand.
All the wand makers.
Right.
There's one, right?
Well, there's
At
more
least
than
in the
one.
UK. Yeah. In the
Yeah,
UK.
no, there's several, because when Ollivander's kidnapped, Harry's like, what are they going to do? And they're like, go to other wand makers.
Yeah. Also, it would be, I mean, what would they, if you had your wand snapped, like, they're not necessarily like forcing you to live as a muggle now. So what are you essentially, like a squib? Because, but also you can learn
You are,
wandless
just
magic.
like the commenter's name, almost a squib. But,
Very true.
Yeah, wandless magic is a thing. So it's...
Yeah, and there's that. So, like, how are they going to just, I mean, I guess they can keep a trace on you because you're underage.
But you could also just move abroad, and then what happens?
Right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways out of this.
Yeah, there's definitely
Hagrid
ways
could
out
be
of
doing
it.
magic right now
Yeah.
if he wasn't so loyal to Dumbledore.
except for the part where Hagrid is doing magic.
Yeah,
Well,
true.
but he could be blatantly performing magic on a daily basis.
You mean like he
Not
does?
just like secret little
Even
fires.
more blatantly.
I mean, he only does it in front of the people that he knows won't rat him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that 11-year-old he met 10 hours ago.
Well, he could just move to France to Madame Maxime, and she can teach him.
There you go.
Oh, I bet she can teach him lots of things.
Exactly. With all types of baguettes, as the French writers will want.
Oh no.
Shall we move on before this gets out of hand?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Hello, dear listeners. Sam Williams here, ready for our chapter summary for Chamber of Secrets. Arthur is a crook, hiding his magical car quirks from Molly. And Harry better change his name to Harold because he's an accomplice. Speaking of crooks, Dobby is trying to play the hero again, and Ron and Harry end up unable to get on the train. And somehow they think flying the car to Scotland is better than just waiting for adults to come and help. This one is more Ron's fault than Dobby's, let's be honest. The Whomping Willow whomps as it's meant to, and leads to some sluggy Ron time with his broken wand. Also, Snape won't be seeing Santa anytime soon, and Minerva skirts some rules for, you guessed it, Harry Potter and the Gryffindor house. But don't worry. Somehow, Dumbledore thinks threatening Harry with expulsion will keep him better behaved. Welcome to Chamber of Secrets.
All right. Indeed, Sam. Yeah, that's exactly what happened in the chapter. Exactly like that. So, shall we get into the chapter discussion?
Yes, do it.
All right, we start with the title. We're going to do word-by-word analysis here.
Oh boy.
Well, we are going to be
Great.
here for 7 hours then.
Yup, exactly. Exactly so. Well, Oreo, last time Karoline was on the episode, she was surprised at how quickly they wrapped up because I wasn't on, and I was like, well, give the guest hosts what they want.
I
I've
didn't
cleared
complain.
my schedule.
I was just surprised.
You don't need to prove a point.
Have you met
Listen,
Irvin?
I want all our guests to have a good experience and to get exactly what they want out of this. So, the chapter title. This is the only chapter out of the 199 in the series that is named after a plant.
See, if it was the story of Neville, then maybe that would be different.
Very different.
Yeah, Chapter 6, Snargaluff Pods. Chapter 8, Mimblus Mimbletonia. But honestly, when I realized that, it was a little surprising for me, because I'm like, like, you know, because we have so many chapters named after spells or after potions or whatever.
Yeah.
First of all, it makes a lot of sense that it is in Chamber of Secrets, because per the whole Sorcerer's Stone obstacles are the 7 books, one by one. It makes sense that this would be in book 2, our herbology book, as it were.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other plants in the series that, you think might be title-worthy?
Well, I think Devil's Snare could have been title-worthy, both during book 1 and book 5. But I also think that so many other more important things were happening at the same time. So I understand why Devil's Snare wasn't in the title. And Mandrakes, because they're also very important in book 2. But maybe that would have been too many plans as chapter titles in one book.
Yeah.
There's the gillyweed as well in Goblet of Fire.
Right, gillyweed, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely... I think if Chamber of Secrets were written in the style of the last 4 books, where we take our sweet-ass time doing things, I think we would have had a Mandrake chapter.
Yeah.
But, this book, it zips right along.
Everything goes on so quickly. I'm always surprised when I read the chapters from the earlier books. I'm like, well, all of this happened in 4 pages.
And then it's and it's Christmas.
Yep. You know what else went quickly? Summer vacation. This chapter starts with the line, "The end of summer vacation came too quickly for Harry's liking." Mine too! Oh, I have never empathized with Harry as much as at this very moment. I too am mourning my summer vacation.
Yeah, me too. And also I feel like it's they really put an emphasis between the contrast on the contrast between Dursleys and Weasleys. And I feel for Harry. I remember having a horrible pit in your stomach when you will have to pay for something that you did, but you also know it will not be addressed for a very long time, and you'll have to carry that feeling around. And him feeling like, oh, I did something bad in the Dursleys' eyes, and I will have to come back to them in a year, and he doesn't know what will happen. And I'm feeling for him.
Really? Do you think Harry is expending all that much mental energy on the Dursleys? Because I never got that impression.
I think momentarily, definitely. Especially when he sees how the Weasleys are. And, he reminiscence, right? That Ron will be able to go back to the Weasleys, and he will have to go back to the Dursleys.
Yeah,
but this is his first time away from the Dursleys that isn't school.
True.
Yeah. I guess I just think that, Harry doesn't expend much mental energy on the Dursleys once he's away from them. He's like, well, they suck, and they're still gonna suck when I'm back, but, this is awesome.
Well, I think, yes, especially as he got older, but at that point, at some point in the books, he is very much has the upper hand, but I don't think we're quite there yet, and as Aureo just said, it's the first time he's been in a kind of normal family and not an abusive one.
Yeah. In general, that, it strikes me a lot about these earlier chapters is, sort of the trio and, all these characters, they haven't been established yet, right? They don't have these relationships because, we think of, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they've been friends for a million years. They know everything about each other. But it's no, it's all still early days. It's all still, new and unsettled for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think what's nice is, even though he's kind of sad about leaving, he's going from, one good place to another. And they still get, a good send-off. And he's still accompanying most of those same people are all coming with him, too. So it's almost... Yeah. It's sad that the summer vacation is over, but at the same time, kind of the fun will continue a little bit, instead of it being such a drastic change. And then so I like that they have kind of a little celebration, about them leaving, even though it's still going from good to good.
You gotta have a farewell feast.
Yes.
Duh.
And with said farewell feast, you get indoor fireworks, which I'm very jealous of.
Yes.
Because I would love that. I love fireworks a lot, and having indoor rated fireworks that won't deafen or blind or harm you would be pretty great. I know we talked about the filibuster fireworks on the Journeys from Hogwarts episode, because Fred and George set them off inside the train compartment, and there was a little bit of a debate about them, but I also, it just kind of got me on like a whole train of thought about thinking about like Fred and George are so often associated with fireworks because they like are such explosive personalities, but then they also create their own. And so I was just like thinking how Fred and George's differ from filibuster fireworks. Like obviously both have magical components, but Fred and George's seem like a lot more complex. Kind of more of like Gandalf fireworks than the other ones. But like, you know, these filibuster fireworks it's red and blue stars, and like they can be inside and things like that. So I was just kind of going down that train of thought of like what would be different about Fred and George's versus filibuster fireworks. And are Fred and George just only buying the like tame filibuster fireworks? Are there crazy ones? I don't know. And I need to know.
I think the major difference between filibuster and Fred and George, is, as far as we can read in the books, is that Fred and George's fireworks kind of react to magic. So I think I always thought like filibuster was just like you set them off and then they do their thing. But with the fireworks from the twins, like they duplicate when you try to make them disappear, and they kind of react to boring people who don't want any fireworks there anymore.
Yeah, no, I agreed. Like, I think sort of filibusters are the, you know, quote-unquote basic ones, as, you know, basic as magical indoor fireworks can be. And Fred and George just, like, take it up a notch. Because, like, also, I think, like, the filibuster fireworks are just, like, regular, like, sparklers and stuff. Whereas, like, Fred and George, just you have, like, the Catherine wheels, and they're writing, you know, dirty words, and, you know, it's a whole big thing.
Mm-hmm. True. Very true.
I forgot about the words.
Oh, I never forget about the dirty words.
Yeah. I also remember, I think it was in the Weasley twins episode, but there was mention of, like, how cruel it was that they were feeding a salamander a firework. But then I was thinking, like, well, if these are indoor fireworks and we're under the assumption that these salamanders, because I'm pretty sure it's in the text that these salamanders, they're fire dwelling, kind of like I don't know. I grew up thinking that all salamanders actually lived in fire. I don't know if anybody else had that, but I thought that salamanders like legitimately lived in fire. And, but that's like these types of magical salamanders do. And so like putting an indoor firework that's like not harmful in the mouth of a salamander, like obviously it's probably not going to like it, but like there was a whole big thing about like they tried to kill the salamander, but I feel like
they did not.
It seems logical that they were not trying to kill the salamander. Like
No.
He could definitely withstand the tiny little firework.
I think, first of all, Molly wouldn't sit there if they would be killing salamanders, because that's a little more harsh than killing something like a fly or mosquito. I also don't think they would kill salamanders on purpose, just for fun, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And also the text says they escape into the fire. So I always thought, well, they don't like it, obviously, because they're flying around the room, but they're not really harmed or especially killed.
Yeah, that was my kind of thought process too. But anyway, I would love some indoor fireworks. Can I have them, please?
Ship it all to Sierra.
Yes, please.
Yep. Yeah, listeners, just start shipping fireworks all over the country. I'm sure it's going to go really well.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so then we have, after the whole kind of leaving feast at the end of the night, everybody goes to bed and then wakes up in the morning for the most chaotic leaving for Hogwarts on record. Which is, I mean, there's other ones where it's pretty crazy, but like this one seems especially so. And I just, before we get into like what makes it so chaotic, I just would like to point out So Arthur has clearly messed with the car, and Molly
Right.
sees the car. I feel like there's no way Molly would not recognize that bigger on the inside technology is magic. Like, has she never been in the car before? Has she never actually seen the inside of the car before?
I mean, I don't think she has.
How long has he had the car? I don't know. Maybe it's a relatively new thing, but
It sounds like a new thing. It sounds like he sort of got it like during or before the summer and he's been tinkering with it. Like, my impression wasn't that it's like a regular like feature of the Weasleys' lives, just that it's like Dad's new toy.
Interesting.
Also, the ministry cars that we see have the same technology, so I think realistically the only other cars Molly might have been in were probably also magically changed cars, so...
Yeah, but wouldn't you recognize, like, this is bigger on the inside, therefore it doesn't make, like, sense for
But
it to
the
fit.
ministry cars were only once they had Harry Potter, and they had to shuttle him around. Like, I don't think Arthur was getting ministry cars
And
before
also,
this.
I think sometimes you're so used to how certain things are that you don't think if they're actually possible for muggles. And I also think that she might have thought that muggles figured out a way to have a more spacious car. I wrote in the notes using, I don't know what I wrote, but it was corrected. Now it's electricity, but I wrote something that Arthur was saying.
Electricity?
Electricity, yes. So maybe Molly just thought, oh, muggles, they found a way to make this machine drive. They maybe found a way to make it bigger inside.
Possibly. Fine. I will concede.
Yeah.
She's an intelligent woman. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt.
For me, it's more like, honestly, I'm more perplexed by Harry's reaction than Molly's. Because Harry's wondering how they're all going to fit in the car, and he's like, how is this car going to fit 8 people, 6 large trunks, 2 owls, and a rat? And I was like, yeah, that last one. How on earth could you fit a rat into a crowded car? They take up so much room.
Well, if the rat turns into a human, then...
Yes, that would make it cramped. But yeah, okay, so going back to your chaotic leaving, do you feel this one's more chaotic? Because I feel like they are always leaving on September 1st in just a swirling storm of chaos. Like, that's always the impression I get.
I don't think so. I think in Prisoner of Azkaban, it's not insanely chaotic. In
Goblet, it is.
In Goblet, it's fairly chaotic, yes. In Order, it's pretty, orderly.
Yeah, and depressing.
And in Half-Blood, same thing. So this one, I definitely feel like is the most, like, wild. I mean, you have like just some of the like quotes. Molly is looking for spare socks and quills. Like, surely they can send these later via owl if really necessary. Like, you really need that extra sock. That's vital for you leaving.
What kind of mother are you who wants to send children off to school without enough socks?
But then
I'm
also,
sorry,
as
this
my
is
grandmother-
a spare sock. This is assuming that there's already like 15 pairs of socks. And again, it can be sent via owl. It's not like... like they have their own
But what if their feet get wet on the journey?
Then they have
what if they
20
fall into
other
the
pairs
lake?
in their trunk. They have drying charms that adults know. There are ways around this. I'm just saying, like, of all the things to be like frantically looking for, those are not vital.
Also frantically looking for when you have Accio, so...
Hey, there's that too. And then, like, people kept colliding on the stairs, half-dressed, with bits of toast in their hands. Like, that's so chaotic sounding. Like, one simple remedy, which is how we all got ready in the morning to go to school, all my siblings and I. Everybody, you're in your room, you get dressed, you get your stuff, and then you go down, and then you go eat wherever you're eating. Like, maybe, you have to go back and grab something from your room or whatever, but it doesn't require everybody colliding on the stairs half dressed.
I think there's a lot of people not being organized. I also think this is obviously next year is as well, but this is one of the years where there's the most people traveling to the Hogwarts Express. Because obviously then slowly but surely, everyone's older, but also Percy obviously graduates. And also Percy next year is head boy, so potentially he just forced everyone to be early because he has duties on the train. I could imagine.
Well, he clearly failed at that.
But he's prefect. He's got them already.
But also, I don't think you can compare it with kids going to school every day, because it's a bit different going to school kind of once a year or maybe twice a year.
Well, also, this is the first time that the Weasleys have a girl going to Hogwarts.
True. That's true.
So, like, that might be slightly different vibes.
and also, like, there's so many kids. Now that I'm a parent, I emphasize so much more. Like, I'm amazed they didn't forget a kid at home, because, like, I can't with all the kids, and I don't know how Molly does that. And I wouldn't, like, if it was orderly, it wouldn't feel right. Especially with Weasley kids.
Yeah,
that's true.
I also wonder if it seems more chaotic than it is from Harry's point of view, right? Because we're getting this from him, and Harry grew up in the Dursley household, where I'm sure everything was just so, and everyone left for school very on time.
Right.
And, you know, there was really only one kid to fuss over, and then Harry trying to stay out of the way. So I think from Harry's perspective, suddenly you have a house with seven children and their parents all trying to pack up and leave the house at once. Mm-hmm. I'm sure even if there's a method to the madness and everyone is, like, you know, doing exactly what they're doing and skirting around each other with their toast, like, to Harry, it's just like, oh my God, what is this anarchy?
That's true. I will give you that. The view of Harry may be, like, slightly exaggerated.
I do think, though, that Molly not using a summoning charm, while it could be, you know, down to chaos and stuff, it could also just be down to, which is if you do read Harry Potter fanfic, that's also a thing that happens all the time, that the author potentially forgot that magic exists. And this could just be one of those occasions where they're like, I think someone who grew up in, you know, the Wizarding World their whole life would probably not look for socks this way.
Do you know how many times I would use the summoning charm in the mornings because my daughter forgets something on the kitchen table, like we're in the car already or we're walking out the door or something, and she always forgets something on the kitchen table, and I'm like, now I have to walk all the way back over there, and it's not far, but it's annoying enough. Like, do you know how often I would just use the summoning charm to grab that thing that she left?
But also, we don't know how Molly's looking for it, right?
Yeah.
Looking for spare socks and quills could just be her, like, going into every single room and being like, Assio socks.
But also, if she does that, and, like, there's chaos at the home, like, granted, socks wouldn't hurt, but, like, if quilts were flying around because she was just in the kitchen saying Accio socks, that Accio quilt, that might be dangerous.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
That's very fair.
Yeah, and then they have to turn the car back around 3 times after leaving. So George forgets his fireworks first. Okay, Shirley, Fred, and Lee have plenty of fireworks covered. They can
not if these are the specific fireworks that George wanted.
Okay. Fine. I will also give you don't send fireworks via owl post purely because air travel plus exploding things plus live air travel, probably not a good plan.
Also, have you met Errol? Like, yes. I don't think Errol can make the trip.
Also Errol, but doesn't, maybe not. I was going to say, didn't Percy get an owl at some point? But that might be when he becomes head boy. Yeah.
But also, the owl's going to be at Hogwarts with Percy.
But they can just send him home to go get it and then send a letter saying, like, Mom, give this owl X, Y, and Z. Boom.
It's easier to just go back for 5 minutes and grab the firework.
True. The first time, fine. Second time, Fred forgets his broomstick. I will be more fair, however, still can be technically sent via owl, as we have seen. Also, I'm sure most of these things are also sent by owl post when you order them.
But the thing is, a broom would take a whole bunch of owls to send, and the Weasleys only have Errol and give or take Hermes, so they'd have to like pay for other owls.
Okay,
so
fine.
Again, cheaper and easier.
Also, I want to add a broomstick, much more substantial space than a rat. A, and B, how did you forget your broomstick?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
listen, when you're 14 and trying to pack for a year, you will forget anything and everything. Like, I have a lot of sympathy for the chaos because, I mean, let's be honest, this is how I pack.
Well, I've seen you pack, so I understand.
Wow! Wow! I mean, like, you're not wrong, but damn.
Shots fired. Shots fired. And the third time they turn around, I'm going to say, I will again kind of give you this one. Ginny forgets her diary. Now, putting aside alarm bells, because diary. Woohoo. She's an 11-year-old girl. This is the 90s. She's only going to have the one diary. It is her life. She puts all of her important thoughts and feelings in that diary, even if this is not a magical diary. And like, this is going to be very common. So like, even though I had like 8 different ones and I never remember to keep writing in them, and I think I put like one sentence on like the front page of every single one that I ever got, and I never actually used one. I understand that other 11-year-old girls were not the same as me. And an 11-year-old girl would throw the biggest hissy that it would definitely require turning the car around. Like, my 3.5-year-old has thrown enough of a tantrum over something like that I've almost done the same just for the sake of everyone's ears. So, like, yes, that definitely requires turning around.
Do you think she has started writing in it by that point? Because then I think, wouldn't the Horcrux being kind of activated, and wouldn't the Horcrux make her feel like, oh, you need to pack me? Like, the Horcrux is very negligent.
She was probably carrying it around. I get the feeling that, like, she was going to put, like, if she had like her, like she wasn't going to put it in her trunk. She was going to like have it on her person. And so if it was like sitting by the door, like waiting for her to grab it on the way out, and she just forgot it on the way to the car. That's kind of what I got the vibe of. Like, she wouldn't have put it in her trunk. She would have it like with her.
To Sierra's point, for an 11-year-old girl, you don't need a Horcrux to make you emotionally attached to
Yeah, exactly.
Also, the diary is like, you know, one of those like early like, oh my god, Joe is brilliant things. Because like, just, you know, drop it in the middle of a sentence and then you're rereading it and you're like, oh my god, here it all is. And like, can you just picture all of Lucius Malfoy's plans being foiled because Ginny forgets to pack her diary?
Right. She just hasn't bothered like opening it yet, and so she just leaves it.
Yep.
Molly finds it while she's cleaning, just tosses it out.
Oh, Molly starts writing in it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that would be a totally different story. Whoa.
I want this fan fiction. I want this so much.
And then falls in love with Tom Riddle.
No.
Yes. Well, no, because this will be the first time Molly's empty nesting. Like, in, like, 15 years or something.
True.
So, like, I could picture her, like, writing in a diary to a compassionate stranger, just, like, pouring out her feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she'd
lonely.
fall in love with him, but that's where I draw the line. I think she
agreed.
and Arthur are...
Yeah, I was talking
goals.
about fan fiction.
Still.
They had 7 kids. I think they're solid. Actually, I'm curious to get your perspective on it. So the whole, like, chaotic leaving in the morning, and they're all trying to, like, have breakfast at the crack of dawn and all that. Wouldn't it just be more sensible to just be like, we're all leaving early, and we're all gonna get, like, sandwiches and coffee at King's Cross? Like, is this one of those times
But
where,
that
like,
costs
the Weasleys...
money.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this is one of the times where the Weasleys' poverty, like, really makes life difficult.
And also, can you imagine, like, all the Weasleys with all their stuff just in a coffee shop in London? Wouldn't they draw a lot of attention to them, and everything would still be chaotic.
I feel like, I don't know. I just, with the amount of like prep that Molly previously puts in, like she makes everybody sandwiches on the first year. She like Ron has sandwiches with him. So why wouldn't she have basically done the same this time and like have food ready the night before, and then everybody just grabs their like sack lunch on the way out the door?
But they probably have their sack lunch, right? For the train ride, and just not for breakfast.
Well, no, because the only thing that Harry and Ron have to eat is the caramels or the toffees that are in the glove box.
But maybe because she wasn't able to give the lunches to them on the platform?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Uncertain. Huh. But I just think she's a very on top of it like mom. So I feel like that would have been prepped in advance. I also don't understand why, like, you're leaving tomorrow, you have time for a big old feast, but you didn't like double check that everybody was already packed. Like,
Sierra, I'm sorry, are you implying people would pack the night before? Because that is very optimistic.
Well, if you do this, like, you're about to pack for an entire year, essentially. I think you would have
and
like
99%.
I think you would have like 99% done. Because I'm thinking of like when I travel.
So am I.
Almost everything is in my bag except for like the things that I need that morning. And my change of clothes is sitting right there, and like I know exactly what I'm bringing, and all I have to pack is like my phone and my charger and like my toothbrush, toothpaste, and like call it a day.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree with Sierra, and also my parents always made sure that we would pack the night before if there was an early start and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, see, my mother usually packed like 3 weeks before, and so I usually packed the morning of.
Yeah, 3 weeks before seems very extreme.
That's a little excessive. Yeah.
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 I'm like somewhere between like 1 to 4 days prior, depending on how long the trip is and how much planning needs to go into it.
I'll do like 1 to 4 days prior for like 80%. But like it's that last 20, like the morning of, that really gets you.
See, I just can't. I'm at a point in my life I cannot handle. Actually, no, I've kind of always been this way. I can't handle that morning stress. Like, I'm already not a morning person. So, like, the less I have to think about in the morning, the better. So, the more that I have, like, already ready to go before leaving on a trip, the less absolutely terrified I'll feel when I finally get on the plane or, like, finally leave wherever I'm going. Because I always have, like, that I'm missing something panic. And so, like, the more certain that I can be that, like, yes, I have everything. It's already there. I don't have to worry about packing something last minute or finding something in the morning. Like, the better for everybody.
You objectively make a lot of sense. And yet.
And yet, life. I get it. This is the ideal scenario. I'm well aware.
Yeah. I've gotten into packing lists. Like, I'm not going to pack everything ahead of time, but I'm just going to, like, make a list on my phone of, like, remember to bring underwear. Like, remember your swim trunks. Mm-hmm. And that's been helpful.
Yeah. True.
But, okay, so in their, chaotic mess, they arrive at King's Cross. And continuing with the chaos, the Weasleys and Harry are always the only ones sprinting through the platform with, like, a minute to go. Like, there's never any mention of, like, anyone else hurrying through the platform. There's never, like, a scrum at the barrier 5 minutes beforehand. Nope. It's always just this one family and Harry who can't ever get there on time. Which, like, listen, glass houses. Like, I'm not casting stones here. I'm just saying.
Well, I think it's established that the Weasleys are a very chaotic family, and most families aren't like that.
True. And most families also have like a lot less kids to deal with.
Yeah.
True.
Which just in general helps the chaos be less, no matter who your kids are.
I think depends how people travel to King's Cross in the first place. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, we can open up the whole debate of does it make sense that your kid from Scotland goes to London to travel to Scotland? But even if you were from like Wales or Ireland, wouldn't you potentially have to arrive a few days before and maybe already in London? So your journey to King's Cross might be easier.
Right. True. Very true. Well, that's a whole thing. Whole can of worms we've cracked a few times, but But yeah, so then they're like running through the barrier, and the order in which everybody goes through, I'm just saying, like, hiking rules. Adult in the front, adult in the back, all the kids in the middle so that nobody gets lost. It's like, I've done this enough times that you always, you have like responsible person in the front, responsible person in the back, and everybody else in the middle so that nobody wanders off, nobody gets left behind, nobody like gets too far ahead or anything like that. You have to like bookend.
Yeah, it's not very responsible. And I also always wondered, like, it seems as if they really go one by one. First Percy, then I don't know who comes next. But like, it's never they just all walk through kind of in a line. They all wait for each other to go through one by one or in pairs, and I don't get why.
I think that is to potentially not cause so much, what's the word here? Basically,
attention.
Yeah, attention, thank you. But then at this point in time, I'm like, well, you're so late. You already sprinted through a whole train station. At this point, I think just
go.
Right, like with your owls, with your trunks.
Yeah.
You already have 8 people about to vanish through a wall within 2 minutes. Like, I don't think it matters if you're going one by one or all of you at the same time. There's still going to be 8 people that were there that are not there anymore.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, I think later on in the books, it might be Order of the Phoenix, they literally go in by 3s. So, like, it's clearly, like, a wide barrier.
Right.
And yet here, I think it's, like, mostly one by one, except I think Molly with Ginny and Harry with Ron.
I think
so I'm like,
Fred and George, like, go together and...
Oh, maybe.
I think maybe Percy. I think it's
Percy is alone.
Percy is by himself. I'll just pull it up because if I don't get it right, it's going to bother me.
Yeah, I think it's Percy alone, then Molly with Ginny, Fred and George together.
Percy first. I'll take Ginny. You two come right up. Percy strode briskly forward and vanished. Mr. Weasley went next. Fred and George followed. And then Mrs. Weasley takes Ginny, and then Harry and Ron are after.
So I think we can establish that Mr. Weasley should have waited.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's our headline. The Weasleys are bad parents.
Not bad parents. They're just not, like, focused on the detail of, like, keeping everybody together. I mean, at least
when
Mrs.
you have that
Weasley's
many kids,
with Ginny.
There's redundancy built in. You can lose 1 or 2.
But like, if you're gonna have a kid go last, have it be like Fred and George.
No. Do you really want to leave Fred and George alone in King's Cross for even a second?
I think they'd be too excited to like go and get on with things and like be able to use magic again. That it wouldn't be really an issue.
Nope.
Like Percy obviously wants to go first so that he can get there to be able to do his like duties and things. So, like, that makes fine logical sense. And then, yeah, it makes sense that, like, someone goes with Ginny. But, like, Percy could go with Ginny. Or, like, Ginny could have gone... I guess Ginny probably is like, I want to be with Mom at this point, which is fine. But still, adult last.
Mm-hmm.
Don't leave the 12-year-olds by themselves.
Like, especially a 12-year-old who's not yours. Like, you should definitely keep an eye on that one.
True.
That.
Yeah.
Like, even if, like, your 12-year-old is expendable by then, like, you know, take...
Yeah, a 12-year-old that's not yours and is, you know, arguably very famous and potentially at this point already someone you could be like, is this maybe too famous a person that we could just have wonder of?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Harry and Ron don't get through the barrier, and do you know what the most magical and unbelievable part of this whole chapter is? The part where Harry literally counts down the seconds to the train leaving, with the implication that it is leaving at 11 o'clock on the dot. Folks, as a New Yorker, this is in no way relatable and, frankly, completely unbelievable to me.
As a New Yorker who's been to Germany, I'm sure you can understand that Carolina and I will also be like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, no chance. Especially just in the cases where you are late, then it will leave on the dot.
Oh, yeah. That's the only time.
Oh, well, that's
they
very
know.
true, yes.
They just know.
Yeah, I think they did a study for, I think, last year's train journeys in Germany, and I think, was it 48% were less than 5 minutes late or something, which means more than half were just late.
Wow.
Yeah, and sometimes you plan it in. Like I remember every time I went home from uni to my parents, I knew if I take a certain connection, I would always be over 1 hour late, which would mean I would get money back. And as a student, that was important. So I always took that road.
Yeah. So it's cute that y'all think that, like, more than 5 minutes late is really late. Because I think the MTA measures on-time performance as, like, well, did it arrive and leave within 10 minutes? Great, then it's on time. And good news, our on-time performance is improving. Some train lines are even hitting 80% on time.
See, I'm not saying that's terrible. Like, Germany is very much known for 2-hour delayed trains.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, how often were you stuck in that train when you were in Stuttgart?
Well, it's not how often, it's just that I was still stuck in it, like 9 hours later when my flight had left.
So, yeah.
And I was still on the train.
So, yeah. And it was, there was, I know no one cares because if America doesn't care about football, but the Euros were just happening in Germany, and they chose to use the train company as the official sponsor for how you get to the stadiums. Like, teams were late because they were traveling by train. And they almost missed
Well, but in fairness, it's not like the game will start without
them. But like, it's the most funny thing, I think.
Yeah. It's like
to have them as a sponsor and then the teams are late.
Ad campaign for not using your trains.
That's hilarious, actually. That's...
Yes.
That's pretty entertaining.
Sorry, Sierra, you have a New Yorker and 2 Germans. Like, we can talk about trains literally all day.
No,
how's the situation
fine.
in Montana?
I have been many places with trains as the primary source of transportation, so I totally understand. Yeah, no, out here you drive. You drive, and you drive like half an hour for anything. So, but that's normal. It takes me just as long to get places as it does you guys, but the difference is I'm actually going quite a distance.
Yeah. I think the one place I would say, I know the Britons like to trash their trains, and as someone who's come from Germany, I'm like, I don't know what your problem is, because almost none of the trains I've ever taken here, and since I don't have a car, I am relying on public transport, have like been at all delayed or been late or anything. Like, they've run so efficiently on time. I'm just like, you have no rights to complain.
Which is generally how I felt as a New Yorker coming to Germany. I'm like, up until that, like, Stuttgart fiasco, because it was bad, I was like, yo, this is magic. Like, do y'all understand how impressive this all is? And Oreo's like, oh no, they're terrible.
Yeah, but I am from Stuttgart, so...
you know what, that's fair.
A city that has spent the last, 15 years moving their main train station underground, and this is causing mayhem in the whole German train network, because nothing ever leaves Stuttgart on time.
Okay, so... moving on from the train. So the train presumably leaves on time. Miracle of miracles.
It's called magic,
and Harry and Ron
Irvin.
are not on
It's
it.
called
It is
magic.
called magic. It's the most magical thing here. Like, don't talk to me about sentient trees and flying cars. Talk to me about on-time trains.
Yes, so the train leaves, and then they're panicking because what do? You don't send an owl. You don't wait for an adult. You jump in a car. They're trying to figure out how to get anywhere, and they can't do anything because they don't have Muggle money. And Ron asks Harry if he has any, and Harry's response is, the Dursleys haven't given me pocket money in about 6 years. And this blew my mind because, one, they ever gave him pocket money. Like, they gave Harry pocket money. For what? When was he ever out with them, without them, or in a position to buy something, allowed to have something for himself? And also, 6 years ago, he was 6 years old. Like, what are you giving a 6-year-old? Like, a 6-year-old you do not like. What are you giving them money for?
I got pocket money at 6. Granted, I hope my parents liked me. And I think it wasn't very unusual to get like a tiny bit to learn how to handle money. But also it might be that I remember we had school trips where we had a list of things we should bring. And one thing was like a tiny bit of pocket money to buy lunch. So maybe they had a school trip.
Yeah, that's the same
thing. Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that like pocket money that he would have on him still. Like, I can see the Dursleys being like, oh yes, you need a couple pounds for this school trip or whatever that we're begrudgingly letting you go on. But as soon as you get back, you're giving us the change.
Yeah, but that would still
but you can always pretend you bought something more expensive.
But he's 6.
But also that would still be the one time he got pocket money.
And he's terrified of them.
Exactly. Like, I think that's the thing. Harry's referring to, like, the one time he got given, like, £5 by the Dursleys because the school mandated they bring money for lunch.
Yeah.
Like, I very much view that as, like, you know, an off-kilter reference to, like, the one thing that happened, not as, like, an actual pocket money thing. Because, Karoline, so as someone who grew up with a mother who did not like me, I can promise you I never got pocket money. Like, not a once.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe he got pocket money regularly. But I don't think, at least in my bubble, it was very normal to get pocket money as a 6-year-old. Like, very, very small amount, of course. But, I don't think that, like, he got pocket money every week or every month. I really think it was just a one-time thing. Because he also said, like, 6 years ago, so...
Yeah. I think the pocket money to a 6-year-old is the lesser point. The bigger point is that the Dursleys gave Harry.
It had to have been a situation where they were kind of forced to give him something.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, because like, you know, they don't want attention drawn to them. So, like, you know, they don't want Harry to, like, be on the school trip and, like, go to the teacher being like, I don't have money for food.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, sort of, it's easier to, like, give him £3 and be like, you buy yourself a crust of bread and you be grateful.
Right. Yeah, that's valid. So then Ron's, like, big idea after figuring out that they can't do one thing is that now they're going to use the flying car to fly from London all the way to the Highlands. And I love his argument. Yes, Ronald, the classic section 19 or something of the restriction of thingy. That's definitely going to fly with the Wizengamot.
Okay, Sierra, listen. That's more than most 12-year-olds would have come up with. Like, I'm pretty sure that all I knew of the law when I was 12 was freedom of speech, and maybe I would have known to plead the fifth. The fifth what? Who knows? No one can say. But like, that was my entire legal knowledge, so frankly, Ron's ahead of me here.
But I think if you're a kid, a magical kid, what kind of section would you know about? Like that's the section you would know about because that's the excuse
right.
to use magic. I think that would be something kind of a not urban legend, that's the wrong word, but like kids would tell each other.
Yeah.
But, like, the title is also, like, absurd. Like, no 12-year-old is gonna be like, yes, the decree for the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery. They'd be like, the decree for the thingy that says we can't do magic.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's 100% how they'd express it.
Yeah. And also, that's where I relate, I think, with Hermione, again, too much. Shouldn't Harry be a bit more scared or cautious? Like, he just nearly got expelled because of underage magic, and like I would be terrified to do anything. Even if Ron said something of the restriction of thingy, I would be so scared. I would never do that. I would probably also not think of sending an owl, to be fair, but I would never be like, oh yes, that's the opportunity to use quite a lot of magic now.
Yeah. Harry's idea is let's go wait by the car, and Ron is like, we'll take the car.
Yeah. I also think part of it is that since he got a letter for Dobby's magic, he has then spent the rest of his summer with the Dursleys. So I think that's probably sort of not very present in his head right now. And he's probably been surrounded by magic quite a lot during that time at the Weasleys. So maybe...
Yeah, it's kind of normalized.
Yeah, I think it's something that he's maybe not standing out so much in his head.
Fair.
Maybe. Yeah. I just remember reading it as a kid and being so nervous for him.
But I mean, Sierra says it. I mean, he was not the one volunteering this idea.
Yeah, of course.
But can I just say, the way that Harry and Ron respond to this whole situation is perfect. It is 200% perfect for 12-year-old boys. I was like, I see what you're doing, I see your thought process, and I have no notes. There's a big problem. It has to be solved now. How do we solve it now? And, 100%, you would never, at 12 years old, think, well, we could just get to Hogwarts tomorrow. They're like, no, we gotta get to Hogwarts now. How are we getting to Hogwarts? And, when all the adults are like, you didn't think, in dismay, and they're like, no, this is how 12-year-old boys think. I just,
That's true.
I love everything about it, and I love that it's, it's a moment of age-appropriate, just, ridiculousness from Harry and Ron, and, I want that for them. Especially as the series goes on and they get more mature and more serious. I was like, no, this is just them being 12 and dumb, and just, I love it so much.
Yeah.
And also, listen, as a boy who was once 12, flying a car to school is just cool, okay? It's just really cool. I get it.
It is really cool. And I also think that Ron always wanted to fly the car. The twins already did it, and now he has a chance. And it, for him, is the perfect excuse to finally do it. But then when I thought about it a little more, I thought, it seems like he already knows how to fly the car. And, who taught him? Who let him practice? Certainly not under Molly's watch, right?
I feel like he probably learned just watching Fred and George fly it to Harry's.
Yeah.
But he seems so confident and now I do this, now I do that. And
well, I feel like we're still in chess master Ron era of he's actually fairly competent sometimes at logical things. And so
you will be missed.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You will be missed.
I think the Whomping Willow pummeled it out of him.
So I feel like him just leaning over Fred and George while they fly the car to the Dursleys, he would have picked up a lot. And maybe he's hung out in the hang out in the shed with Arthur, watching him fiddle with it once or twice. And I feel like at this point he still is a fairly logical person who can figure it out. So that would still, and also I think a 12-year-old boy's self-confidence in being able to do a thing that they have not done before.
No, of course. He just seemed so knowledgeable and as if he had done it before. But that might also just be very confident.
I could also see the twins telling him about it.
Yeah.
When they're going to rescue Harry and Ron is like, wait, so how do you fly this thing? And I think Fred and George would be like, our little brother wants to fly a flying car. Mm-hmm. I think they would feel very warmly towards him and be like, so here's the ignition and you press that. I feel like they'd actually get really into it.
I would think they would just tease him and you're not flying the car, we are, just shut up, Ron. And I think that's why he wanted to fly the car finally without twins around. I would never think they'd
whereas I think they'd respect the initiative and curiosity. I think it could be a really nice brotherly moment for them.
Maybe. I don't know.
But yes, Carolina, to your point, I think Josie Kearns over at the Harry Potter Companion put it best when she's like, this is a classic example of why they should never be allowed out of the house without Hermione in tow. Facts. Like, it all would have gone very differently.
Yes. That's very true.
But they do get into the Fort Anglia, and they fly off into the sun.
Yes. And they're very excited at first. And I found the transition between the initial excitement at, being in a flying car and having done something, accomplished it. They got out of London. They're on their way. Quickly turned annoyance with just traveling, just to be so accurate. Because that's the way I feel for all drives or flights. At the beginning, it's like, it's exciting and it's new and, oh, wow, look at that view or whatever. And then you're hot and it's cramped. You're hungry. All you have is snacks. Why didn't we pack a sandwich? All we have are pretzels. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And I find that shift to be just so accurate.
Yeah.
And
I honestly, even the way it's phrased, it's so perfect and it's so relatable. Like, Harry had to admit some of the fun was wearing off. The toffees had made them thirsty and they had nothing to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Harry's t-shirt was sticking to the back of his seat.
Yep.
And especially, he had stopped noticing the fantastic cloud shapes now and was thinking longingly of the train miles below where you could buy ice-cold pumpkin juice. And I was like, every word of that, I was like, I get it, I feel it, I'm here for it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Like, in general, this chapter, like, it captures, like, 12-year-old energy so well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk the Ford Anglia in general. I have many questions. So obviously
we have few answers. We have very few answers.
I know, but I have many questions. So hopefully someone out there has enough of a theory that it convinces me that it's the correct answer. So obviously, when it's flying, it's running on magic, right? When it's on the ground, is it using petrol? Is it still using magic? Is it a hybrid? Does it use both? And then also, the engine is dying, and Ron is saying it's because it's never been this far before. But if the car was on the ground and not flying, would that still be the case? Would the engine have given out? Is it just because it's a very old car in general? Is it because of all the tinkering that has occurred? Or is it because they're trying to, like, run a flying car off of magic that is wearing off? And that's why the engine dies. I have so many questions.
Well, I think it runs on magic because I can't imagine Arthur making it run on petrol because that's not very practical.
Arthur does not know how combustion engines work.
Yes,
I'm just put that out there.
That too, probably that too. And I thought it was more like kind of a personification of the car that we see later on too, like the car actually being tired after such a long time. It's an old car, and so it got tired, and at the end drove away because she I don't know, the car didn't want to be with them anymore, or maybe just the flying spell would get weaker after a while. And I just had the question, how sentient is the car actually?
Pretty sentient and growing more so. Like, I think the magic that Arthur put on it, like, began to aliven it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing the more you use the magic, the more alive it gets. So, like, when you take her on a 1-hour joyride, like, it's fine. She, like, is developing some stirrings of conscience. For, like, a 9-hour flight, that Ford Anglia has a personality, and she is not pleased.
Yeah, she does not want to fly anymore.
And I don't think she ever does. Doesn't she rumble through the grounds and is on the ground for the rest of everything that we see?
Yeah,
here?
she's like, listen, I'm too old for this shit. Like, I'm staying firmly earthbound.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know.
Or the flying spell just has reached its end, and they burned through all the magic available, or she absorbed it.
Yeah.
Because they start falling out of the sky.
Wait, maybe that's it. Maybe she's literally absorbing the magic, like, to come alive, and that's why the magic begins to get faulty.
Maybe.
How would that
Potentially.
work?
I don't
Absorbing
know.
the magic from Ron and Harry, you mean?
No, like, absorbing the magic from all the, like, spells on it.
Okay, yeah.
But wouldn't...
No, I don't think it's literally sucking Harry and Ron's magic out. That's a different genre.
It's awful.
But wouldn't... If it absorbed it, wouldn't it then still be able to fly? Am I...
Well, I'm just thinking, like if it's taking the magic of flight and then using it for a different purpose, just taking, like, the like the magic...
Yeah, like the magical energy.
And instead of using it for flight, is using it for something else.
Okay,
but
okay.
I was more figuring that just the magic was, like, spells can only last so long.
Yeah.
And so it's just done now. Like, they exhausted the flying ability of the car.
Yeah, and I mean, we see that...
without it being recharged.
We see that frequently with other spells. That, you know, like posters that shout stuff and the spells wear off. Same with, like, the badges and stuff like that. The Potter Stings badges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, talk of which, there was a really cool connection that Steve Vander Ark made over at the Lexicon about the invisibility booster. So Steve wrote that the invisibility booster is some sort of magical device which casts a magical effect when the button is pushed. In some ways, it's similar to the headless hats invented by Fred and George several years later. Hermione remarks about the hats that they've managed something clever, making the invisibility effect extend downward. Perhaps they got the idea from their father's addition of the invisibility booster to the Anglia. Which, like, A, I thought was a brilliant connection, but B, you could also see the similar magic, where, like, you know, she says that, like, I imagine the spell wouldn't have a very long shelf life, you know, kind of just like the Ford Anglia's magic begins to wear off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the invisibility goes first.
Yeah.
I mean, and Fred and George, they learn a lot from Arthur, and Arthur is very crafty, and they just develop that and make it into something that gets them rich as well.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's very entrepreneurial because, like, you know, I think Arthur is as much a tinkerer as they are, but they're just like, wait, we can, like, do something with this.
I think what sets Fred and George apart is that they don't think in the box. So, you know, Arthur might be like, there's a spell that, you know, it can only do this one thing and it'll be nice. Whereas Fred and George are like, no, we want to achieve this. How do we get there?
Right. I like that, though. I would agree, because they definitely have that connection to Arthur that none of the other kids really pick up on. But I mean, it's just even seen just in their shop, having the whole section for quote, quote, nutters like dad, but they wouldn't have put it in there if they didn't love their dad so much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he probably gave them a lot of ideas.
Yeah. Someone who would need some more love in this chapter is Hedwig, though.
Poor Hedwig. The she puts up with.
Poor Hedwig. Seriously. Okay. Why... the logic of following the train, fine. A train is on the ground and has to go on a track. It is not going to be the most direct route to wherever they're going. Hedwig, however, knows where the school is and would be in the air. They would not have to continuously dip back down to check on the train if they just let her out and then followed her there. She can make that flight. She's made it. She's made the flight before. Also, sorry, one last little bit.
Sure.
A lot can happen in a half an hour. They're checking every half an hour. What if they check, they go back up, and 1 minute later, the train makes a hard right, and then they're still flying. They're still flying straight for 30 minutes, and now they have no idea where the train is. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I'm just saying there are flaws to this plan that could have been solved by just letting Hedwig fly and not keeping her in a cage for longer than necessary.
I'm going to argue against all of this. Pretty much, I'm on Team Harry and Ron. I was like, they did nothing wrong.
I don't even think Harry and Ron are on this team after they have been talking to from Snape and Dumbledore.
So, yes, Hedwig knows the way to Hogwarts, but Hedwig does not fly at the speed of the Hogwarts Express. So if they're trying to arrive that night, then Hedwig might fly too slowly. And, like, again, the whole point of this scheme is that they get to Hogwarts, like, when everyone gets to Hogwarts, because getting to Hogwarts the next day, it cannot be done. It is physically impossible, and the world would end. So they can't follow Hedwig based on pace.
Okay, I guess I don't know the flying speed of a car versus the flying speed of an owl versus the speed of a train.
Hold on, flying speed of snowy owl.
But also they are fantasizing about arriving while everyone is watching, so they don't want to be there earlier, and they don't want to be there much later.
That too. And the other thing about the, like, finding the train, I hear what you're saying because I had the same thought. But the thing is, first of all, like, they're way high up above it, so they can see the tracks. So, like, if there's, like, a hard right turn, like, here and now, like, they'll see it. But generally, like, it's fairly... The Hogwarts Express is distinct. It's, like, bright scarlet against, like, green fields and purple moors and whatever. So you can very easily see it. So I think, sort of... Your odds are good of, like, dipping down and seeing a giant scarlet train somewhere in your line of sight.
I think, though, that some part of that is just general logic flaws of how does a train run from London to Scotland without going through any other bigger towns? Because there is only so much of a rail network in Britain, and it's definitely hitting the big towns, so it's very unrealistic that the Hogwarts Express just has one track that doesn't go through any towns and no one's realized.
No, but it does. It goes through a great city, alive with cars.
But then there's more than one track, so you could easily follow the wrong one.
Well, but I mean, they know, like, you know, in which direction they're going in.
There's also more than one track going north.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna Google how to get to Inverness from London by train, and we shall see.
You can
we shall see how many tracks there are.
You can either go via Glasgow or Edinburgh. I can already tell you that. So it already depends if you're crossing through the country at some point or you're staying on one side of it.
But, like, same general direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, honestly, Google Maps is giving me, like, essentially two main routes, like, along the west, which hits Glasgow, or along the east, which hits Edinburgh. But, so, like, I think once you're on them, there's not that much variation.
I think once you're in the north of England, you're fine. I'm just saying you start in London, where there's going to be lots of different trains. And it's still in the Midlands, you still have lots of different cities and towns. There'll be lots of different train tracks.
There don't seem to be that many, like, running diagonal. I feel like sort of once you're east or west, like, you sort of stick with whichever one you're on.
I mean, it also depends what they looked like in the 90s versus now, I guess, but...
This could be a really deep research project.
Yeah.
Like, let's get into it.
But I'm sort of like saying, I think now my brain's been stuck on what's the flying car speed versus the train speed?
So that I don't know. So we will never find out with a flying car speed. The train speed would be around 60 miles an hour, which is
so that
roughly
already could be the first floor where the car is just slower and it doesn't keep up.
Because a snowy owl can fly at speeds of 50 miles an hour, which is not that much slower than the train.
I guess it's the question of, can she do it for like 8 hours?
What train were you looking at?
But also then they'd arrive 2 hours late. And the last time they were out and about that late, they lost 200 points for Gryffindor. So, yeah.
Yes, but as they will argue to McGonagall later, when they did this, the term had not started. And therefore...
Yes, but that was for the crime of stealing the car. I'm saying if they are at Hogwarts and not in their dorm late at night. And that would be after term has started.
No, if they arrive 2 hours late, they're still at the feast.
What kind of train did you look up? A steam train?
I looked up a light railway order speed limit in the UK in the 90s is about 25, but that is like the low. During the mid-1990s, the average speed of trains in the UK hovered around 60 miles per hour, which is about 95 kilometers an hour on most routes, rolling through the countryside at that pace, leisurely journey. So, like, standard maximum speed is 125 miles an hour, which is 200 kilometers an hour. But that's more inner city, high-speed trains.
Yeah.
Like, and then you get to, like, Eurostar, which is, like, 140 miles an hour, 225 kilometers. So that's different. But these are, like, cruising through the countryside trains would be approximately 60 miles an hour, 95 kilometers.
Now someone needs to calculate the air, and winds that the car would have to pass against.
The average airspeed velocity.
Yeah, we need to figure out the air resistance on September 1st in the British Isles.
Well, we all know the answer is magic.
Yes. I think we have reached as far as this research is currently going to take us.
We need someone who actually has like a degree in physics or something.
Yes.
So, while they are flying at an undetermined speed in a vaguely northern direction, it's time for the 7 ingredients of today's special. So, while they are flying, there are 7 sights that they see when they dip down to check, where they are and where they're going. So they start in London, then they see neat green fields, wide purplish moors, they see a great city alive with cars, which I'm guessing is going to be either Sheffield or Leeds, based on the time. They see villages with tiny toy churches, they see a snow-capped mountain, and then, 7th and final, high on the cliff over the lake stood the many turrets and towers of Hogwarts Castle. And of course, that makes 7.
Woohoo!
Not gonna lie, I was excited when I found that one. I was like, ooh, here it is.
That's a good one.
But, so when they finally get to Hogwarts, they don't quite stick the landing. And there's always the line, in all caps, "Watch out for that tree!" And am I the only one who hears that in 100% George of the Jungle cadence every time?
Nope. I don't even know what that is.
Watch out for that tree.
I also don't know what that is.
George of the Jungle, oh, he can be.
That does not help.
It was a 90s movie with Brendan Fraser. It's basically Tarzan. Guy grows up in the jungle, humans come, shenanigans ensue.
Okay. Except for that he goes out of the jungle instead of them staying in the jungle. Tarzan. So good, though.
Yeah. Oh, it was a great movie.
Fantastic.
I'm going to say it was a great movie when I watched it in the 90s. I can't quite vouch for whether it held up.
Well, I tried, but you fellas are just too smart for me.
Oh, no.
Oh, no was right for the exhausted ape nappers.
Why don't you say something constructive for a change? Like what we should do now?
Because I don't like you.
Oh, I hate you, you snotty son of a...
I pretend I didn't hear that. Having some fun now.
Thor, were you fighting with the narrator? Well, he started it.
Did not.
You did too.
Did not.
You did too.
Did not.
You did too. Stop it. That's it. I'm not dragging this thing another inch.
So yes, the Whomping Willow appears. And as per usual, I have questions.
And I think I have answers this time.
And you think you have answers, which is amazing. I love it. So, is the Whomping Willow one of a kind? Or is it a species? Because if it is one of a kind, surely they could have made it slightly less dangerous now that it isn't guarding an adolescent werewolf. If it is a species, I would absolutely hate to wander into whatever that forest is without warning.
Would the trees just start a brawl with each other in that forest?
I don't know.
No, I think they reached an accord and they would only fight, intruders. So Snape refers to them doing damage to a very valuable Whomping Willow, not the valuable Whomping Willow. So I think that very heavily implies that it's a non-native species in the UK, and they probably had to import it from, wherever this deadly forest is, let's be honest, Germany, and plant it there. Guys, I've been to Germany, I've been to the Black Forest, like, how are you gonna argue with that?
Yeah, I can't argue.
But also, like, Sierra, to your point, like, isn't that, like, a classic trope in fantasy? Like, movies, literature, like, the whole deadly forest with violent plants that want to kill you. I mean, sort of everything comes to mind from Naomi Novik's novel Uprooted to my absolutely beloved 90s animated movie Quest for Camelot. Cue I Stand Alone on the Pub's Jukebox because I am obsessed with that movie.
That movie terrified me the first time that I watched it, and I don't think I ever watched it again.
Oh, no, literally, it was my favorite as a kid, because I remember watching it with my dad, and, like, I mean, I love fantasy, I love, you know, Arthurian myth, Deadly Forests, like, you know, all of that, you know, animated musicals, and then, like, when my dad died, and, like, in the movie, like, the protagonist's dad dies, you know, after a few minutes, and so then it just took on, like, a whole lot of meaning and feelings for me, so just, it was my absolute favorite as a kid.
Yeah. I think I was very into all of those things too. I was also kind of I don't know if it was necessarily sheltered because I watched them. So it's not like I wasn't watching things. I feel like I was very sensitive to like scary things. And so, or like very emotional things. And
it is so emotional.
Yeah. Oh. And so I think a lot of that, like I was very empathetic. Especially, like, I'm still that way, but now I can watch whatever and it's fine. But, like, as a kid, I didn't, like, know how to deal with, like, empathy for, like, characters on screen. And so I'd watch something and I'd be like, I am now so upset I can never watch this again. And there's a bunch of movies that, like, I watched once as a child and will, like, have not seen again to this day. So that's probably just on me.
So I strongly recommend watching Quest for Camelot. That one absolutely holds up because I watch it regularly and cry my eyes out every time. And it's so good. No, like, let me tell you the depth of my obsession. So this movie is based, and oh so very loosely based, on this, like, 1980s novel called The King's Damosel, which is completely out of print. Like, sort of has not existed in decades. And I managed to find, after years of searching, a used copy on eBay. And I got it. And I read it. And it was awful. And had no connection to the movie. But, like, that is the depth of my obsession.
I've never heard of the movie before, but I never know if that's just because Germany or because I also was very sheltered. I wasn't really allowed watching many movies.
I mean, the movie didn't do great, like, financially. Like, Warner Brothers released it when they were, like, trying to get a foothold in 90s animation, and they failed. So, yeah, it's a bit of a cult classic. But Gary Oldman voices the villain. The villain with an absolutely wonderful villain song. So, yes, there's a Harry Potter connection. I'm not just prattling on about nothing.
And it also, like, I think I also associated it for whatever reason with the Black Cauldron, which came out, I mean, I think that was like still like 10 years before or something like that. But that was, some like 10, somewhere between 10 and 15 years before. Black Cauldron
came out like 85-ish, and Quest for Camelot was 98.
Okay. Yeah, so like, but I always felt like those were kind of in the same like vein. And Black Cauldron actually, I think, is the one that terrified me the most. But I just remember being like, yes, those and like Fern Gully all just kind of like meld into one. Like, I must have seen them all like back to back or something like that, because they all kind of meld into one like fever dream of terror for me.
So Loki, like, from the very beginning and to this day, the way I picture Voldemort in my head is the Horned King in Black Cauldron.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But okay, so the Whomping Willow.
Yes.
Going back to things I have heard about. You said earlier that you don't understand how they made it. didn't make it less dangerous. I don't think Hogwarts makes anything less dangerous.
Word.
Any point. And I kind of like the duality of the Whomping Willow being kind of protective of the entrance of the shack, but also very, very vicious. And there it also seems it's a bit sentient, as it's not only protecting the entrance, but really like angrily trying to hit them out of its reach. And I noted a quote down. They could hear its roots creaking as it almost ripped itself up. Like, would it be able to do so? And if yes, would it run after them? Because that sounds even more scary.
Oh gosh.
Well, I think it could do that, but then it would die, because,
Okay.
I think it, like, needs roots in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if the Whomping Willow ever got really, really pissed, it would just be like, you know what? Suicide mission, but I'm gonna get these damn kids.
But would it die immediately? Could it just
No,
not
I think
return afterwards, after it killed Ron and Harry?
I feel like, I mean, it's not like it's an ent, like...
So, honestly, it depends, right? It depends on how much energy a tree would use to, like, run after kids versus how much energy it can store
Are we doing
up
more
as opposed
maths
to...
now?
Oh god.
Now we
Yes,
need a biologist.
100%. I want the rate of photosynthesis in a tree. Yeah, clearly we are going back to school on this episode of the Three Broomsticks. Summer vacation is over. But Karolina, in fairness, if someone hits me with a car, I would also be pissy about it. So, like, I don't blame the Whomping Willow
You
for
would
being
just
pissed.
be pissy, not like dead, but just pissy about it.
Well, if I weren't dead, I'd be very pissy.
Yeah, I understand. Like they also, as Snape later says, they hurt the poor tree, so
Exactly.
should be angry.
And doesn't Ron sass back? It's like, more like it did damage to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and talking about damage to them, Ron's wand breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love the symbolism of wands in the books, and I was wondering if you think that, like, Ron's insecurity that is still, or it's always strong, but is still very childlike insecurity is reflected in the wand. Like, he was trying to do something really, really cool. They were hoping for cheers when they came back, but it ended in a horrible crash and like a terrible welcome back to school. So that was one thing I was wondering.
Yeah. I definitely think, like, the wand, sort of more than anything else, is emblematic of his, like, poverty and the whole hand-me-down thing. Because, like, a wand especially, it's so personal, right? It chooses the wizard. Like, you really shouldn't get a secondhand wand. Like, like, robes and books and whatever, like, fine. So I think the fact that he has a secondhand wand more than anything else drives home, like, his whole struggle, and the Weasley struggle. Also, like, I know we joked about it earlier, but genuinely, like, when his wand breaks, that's kind of the end of, like, our competent, like, strategy commander Ron.
Yeah.
So, like, for all that, like, this wand wasn't his, yeah, maybe it made him excel in other ways.
Yeah.
And once he, like, got a decent wand, he no longer, like, compensated as much, like, with the whole strategy and chess master aspect of himself.
Maybe.
Huh.
But he was still good at chess, right? Afterwards.
We just, like,
Yeah,
never
yeah.
really hear about it again.
Yeah, he just never does anything impressive with it.
True.
Ever again. Aside from,
Yeah.
like, saving Harry from the Horcrux.
Yeah. Peanuts.
Otherwise it'd be like, and Harry drowned in the lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, how could the school have let him carry on with a broken
Yeah,
wand
makes
for a
no
year?
sense.
Like, that's dangerous for everyone around him and
Mm-hmm.
Ron himself. And then I thought, wouldn't it be nice if the school had a couple of, like, very easygoing spare ones, generic spare ones? Because I don't think that's the first one that has been accidentally broken. Maybe.
No, we have definitely talked about this.
Yeah.
So we had a really great, like, in-depth conversation about it in the comments on our website. I think the comments on episode 29, which was Chamber of Secrets chapter 16, I feel like every time we're talking about this book, it's just about broken wands. So like, honestly, I recommend listeners just like read the whole conversation in the comments there.
We talk about it during the episode too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think my perspective on it, not to like get all the way back into it, is that like Ron should have written home to the Weasleys and gotten another wand.
Right.
Like, I feel like it's not expected that anyone would be dumb enough to try using a broken wand for the year.
I still think
and
a
Ron told,
teacher
like,
should have
they'll
stepped
kill
in,
me.
though.
Yeah,
After
the
it became
teachers
clear that
noticed.
Ron
Yes.
wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
McGonagall should have been like, look, I'm going to write to your parents because you're clearly not doing it.
Yes. But yeah, I think just like no one at Hogwarts would conceive that like Ron could be that dumb.
But they see it in classes, and he is a danger to everyone around him.
And he's being teased about it in public.
Yeah. So I don't,
Like-
I
But also,
don't
like-
think that stands as the other teachers are not aware. The teachers must be aware.
Well, listen, again, y'all just said that there are lots of dangers to everyone at this school, and no one seems bothered.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
But it is a school for learning magic, and this feels like a
Yeah.
crucial part to it.
Yeah. Someone on those comments, it might have been Absent-Minded Raven. Yeah, I should probably look it up. But they said that there's probably like a social aspect to it, where like, you know, it's considered gauche to like interfere with another like child's wands, sort of like, you know, that's clearly like the parents' domain, and like you shouldn't bring it up.
Yeah, but then it is a boarding school, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are sort of expected as the heads of houses that you are filling into at least a little bit into that
parental
parent
role,
role.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, like, I don't think it's, like, a good or logical thing, that the way it went down, but I feel like societally, like, it can be understood how
I feel like
happened.
it almost is because we needed this plot to happen for Lockhart to not be successful. So logic went out of the window.
I don't know about that, because honestly, like, there's so many ways to just have stuff blow up in Lockhart's face. I think it was more about, like, creating a struggle for Ron than it was about Lockhart at the end of the day. Though actually, I'm curious, what do you guys think? Like, do you think the wand is here purely for Lockhart?
I think a big part, maybe, but I think it's also showing us how wands in general work, because wands get very, very important, of course, at the end, and how ownership of the wand works. And I think it's just getting more in depth with wands in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when the Whomping Willow is walloping them, or womping them, I suppose, there is a great description of a branch that is as thick as a python. And I was just like, I see what we're doing. So we're going with the whole, like, snake theme early on in this book. Yeah. So I thought that was a cool, like, harbinger of things to come.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is this chapter in general, between, like, the diary and the broken wand and everything.
Yeah, I definitely think this is the chosen phrasing to hint at the snake theme overall, because I don't know about you, maybe it's just me, but I have no frame of reference of how thick a python is. And also, aren't there not different types of pythons with potentially different levels of thickness?
I think so, yes.
We do need a biologist.
Yeah. Well, apparently pythons can be like 3 feet around, maybe even 4 feet. Pretty damn thick.
Yeah.
Yikes.
But yeah, no, we really do need a scientist, like, consultant on staff. So actually, I was looking into sort of like, you know, the background of this whole sequence, and the cool thing is it wasn't always going to be the Whomping Willow that they crashed into in this chapter. They were originally going to crash into the Great Lake and meet the merfolk earlier on. So from a Pottermore piece back in the day, Joe wrote, "In the original draft of Chamber of Secrets, I had Harry and Ron crash into the lake in Mr. Weasley's Fort Anglia and meet the merpeople there for the first time. At that time, I had a vague notion that the lake might lead to other places, and that the mer people might play a larger role in the later books than they did. So I thought that Harry ought to be introduced to both at this stage. However, the Whomping Willow provided a more satisfying, less distracting crash, and served a later purpose in Prisoner of Azkaban too. And like, I found this really interesting. So like, on the one hand, it would have made like a really elegant like books 2, 4, and 6 ring for the three of them. You know, you crash land into the lake in book 2, you're in the lake for the second task in book 4, and then you have the mer people at Dumbledore's funeral in book 6. But I also was wondering, like, what possible role could have been intended for the merfolk in later books? Like, you know, where did Joe potentially see them factoring in? Like, the only two ideas I had were maybe that they factored into the creepy cave in Half-Blood Prince. You know, like, Voldemort has his, like, you know, cave of Inferi, and you have to, like, swim out to them, and maybe, like, the merfolk show up and carry an injured Dumbledore and Harry away or something. Or the merfolk could have, like, helped Harry, like, hide underwater in Deathly Hallows and, you know, in the middle of the camping trip. But, like, do you guys have any ideas?
Oh, I thought it was potentially more something else that's close by to Hogwarts. So I was wondering maybe the centaurs took part of that role.
Interesting. That would be a good idea.
I thought maybe there would have been like a magical connection underwater to the cave. Or they would have to hunt a Horcrux in the water. It would also then have made sense for the trio or for Harry to kind of see all the different ways one can survive underwater, because that also leads nowhere in the fourth book. If they have to then find a Horcrux or something underwater, and or maybe even have like an underwater fight, mermaids fighting Inferi, even though I don't want to picture that, because underwater fight and then against Inferi is really not something that I want to dream about.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be interesting. Like, the whole, you know, the whole Great Lake leading to other places, that was a very popular theory back in the day. There was a columnist at MuggleNet called Brandon Ford who named his entire column The Underground Lake and was, like, espousing all these theories. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I think that definitely could have, at least the, like, travel via lake could have been a very interesting element to have if we were going to kind of leave this one area. Because we have, you know, they could have ended up at Durmstrang to investigate the Deathly Hallows symbol and everything, because it's there. Right. So I think, or like, you know, connect with international wizards and get Crumb back in the picture or whatever, could have been very interesting to loop all of that back in, because I feel like we talked about this in our characters missing from the Battle of Hogwarts, but like Crumb is just not there. and that's like a big missed opportunity. And that could have been an easy, well, I don't know about easy, but like it could have been an interesting way to branch the two of them back together, Hogwarts and Durmstrang. So having, like, they could have used the lake as a method of transportation to Durmstrang to like recruit or learn something, or maybe find
Grindelwald.
Grindelwald. So like that could have been like a whole side scenario instead of camping. Or as well as I like the idea that you had of hiding underwater at some point. That could have been very interesting. I think once you get into like merfolk, that ends up being like a whole can of worms, and you really have to like take the whole story in that direction. Into like more of a watery direction. Which is not necessarily bad, but it's just different.
Right. I mean, like, as someone who's very much still in summer vacation mode, I was like, hell yeah, like, let's talk underwater mermaids.
I think at that point we might have gotten a Gillyweed type title chapter.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, so then, so they do crash into the Whomping Willow, though. They don't go into the water. And then they make their way up to the castle after the Ford Anglia kicks them out and runs off into the forest. And they make
and mind you, the Whomping Willow is still flailing its branches threateningly. They're like, come at me, bro! I love that visual.
Yeah, so then they go and they're looking through the windows and they're watching the sorting. And I just thought that was interesting because them watching the sorting is basically just a reason for having exposition. In so many book series, especially like in the first couple books, a lot of the like beginning chapters have sections that's like, let's catch the reader up on the basics here of what happened in the previous book. All right. Oh, now we've gotten to Hogwarts, so we better explain a little bit about how Hogwarts works. And so just in case you either forgot from the first one or somehow ended up here without reading the first one, which I know has happened to some people. So
yeah, I was going to say, I feel called out.
No, I mean, it happens, but like, that's like a big reason why, because people, especially like, I feel like less recently, like binging something was like not as much of a thing.
Yeah.
And so like you waited for however long before the next one came out and you didn't necessarily reread in the meantime. And so you would have to like refresh your memory. Oh, why are they sorting? What are they doing? Oh, they're by the house, they're by their house tables and like that kind of like explanation of the Great Hall and whatnot.
Wait, what do you mean you didn't reread in the meantime? You mean you just read a new book in the series without rereading the last one?
Yeah,
it depends.
I was going to say...
Most of the time, yeah.
Most of the time successfully. The only time I didn't do it successfully was with Inheritance. And I was like, I remember. Did not remember.
Yeah, like there's...
And that book does not do a lot of catching up because that one banks on you having read the previous books and still remember them.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, but with Inheritance, didn't he literally include recaps in front of the story?
Yeah, but they were like, 2 pages long for like the 3 previous books? Did not help me for book 4.
I don't know, they still contained lots of detail. They're like, well, then they galloped 25 miles, and then the next day they galloped 28 miles. And then, wow, they sure galloped a lot of miles trying to get away from Murtaugh.
So maybe it was just around the distance that they covered.
But yes, sorry, Sierra. Yes, exposition. It's all exposed.
So
exposited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with Harry Potter, what always surprised me is for how long that goes on. Like, I think it's very reasonable in book 2 to have it, but I think you still, to a degree, have it in almost like book 5, where I'm like, surely by this point in time.
No, book 5 is the one where they finally gave up.
Yeah, but so even by book 4, I mean, that feels like a lot longer than it probably needed to be with how quickly it became so popular.
Possibly.
Yeah. Which, like, the great irony being, like, that they did these recaps when the books were coming out every year. And then when, like, there was 3 years between Goblet and Order, she was like, you know what? Y'all had time to reread this. Like, I ain't holding your hand anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's movies now, so you can watch those.
Also, this book is 870 pages. You don't need a recap on top of it.
Nah.
That's probably the most valid point.
But we do need this chapter on Grob. You just cannot miss it.
Yes.
Oh, no way, no how. But yes, so they arrive at Hogwarts and they arrive in disgrace. It's not quite the triumphant entrance they were picturing.
No. And I just, obviously, like, the flying car was spotted. It made the papers, which I'm assuming is like the evening edition of the Prophet. And so even if the car is flying in the general direction of the school, Snape jumps to the conclusion that it is indeed Harry and Ron inside said flying car, sees the newspaper article when he's like supposed to be getting ready for the feast or at the feast, sees the newspaper article, assumes that it's Harry and Ron inside, has time to leave the castle, inspect the grounds, find out that there's damage to the Whomping Willow, and then find them It feels like a little bit of a leap to go from like, there's a stolen car, it must be Potter.
For
I feel like maybe
Snape,
that's
it's
just
a leap.
how Snape's mind works, I guess.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I went down a deep rabbit hole on like Snape's perspective on this, but I think it is more the fact that it's Snape, that it's Harry, that it's specifically Harry Potter. Like Snape, and I mean probably many other people, but specifically Snape, are keeping tabs on Harry. Like if Harry doesn't arrive on the train, you're like, well, where's Harry Potter? And then if there's a Ford Anglia flying to Hogwarts and there's no Harry Potter on the train, I mean, like, it's a leap, I'll grant you that, but, like, it's not a completely outlandish leap to, like, put the two and two together, especially because Harry Potter's godfather is known for a preferred mode of transit that also involves flying vehicles.
Do we not also think that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley have somehow communicated with the school that two of the children went missing?
Absolutely.
I mean that must have also happened. So I'm sure the school was already on alert of potentially they are arriving differently.
Well,
yeah,
maybe, but then like they say, "Oh, we're telling your families." So that kind of makes it sound like the families did not report it to them. They're reporting
but maybe
it
that's
to the
only
families.
the part of you've also damaged the tree.
Yeah, like we're telling them how much trouble you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like I genuinely think Snape was like looking for Harry, because it's Harry Potter.
Yeah, and it's Snape.
Yeah. And honestly, once I started thinking about it, Snape must be having the worst PTSD on this day, because Harry, like, especially given the fact that they crashed into the Whomping Willow, like, just to recap, Potter caused trouble, arriving with his bestie in an over-the-top flying vehicle, the Whomping Willow is involved, like, Snape is just like, oh my god, it's all happening again. And, like, for all that, like, Snape thinks Harry is just like James and all that, I find his perspective really, really interesting in this moment, because, like, what he was thinking, right? For all that he kvetches about Harry, like, literally from day one, right? Because we see in The Princess Tale, he's like, arrogant as his father, mediocre, blah, 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 you know, like, cartoon style. This is the first, like, thing that Harry's done that can, like, properly be called attention-seeking.
Yeah.
Like, everything he does in Sorcerer's Stone, like, he breaks a lot of rules, like, he does not follow, you know, most of the rules, but, like, none of it is, like, done with the goal of, like, causing mayhem and getting attention, right? He's mostly just, like, sneaking around because he's curious and he, like, doesn't care about curfew, but, like, the Ford Anglia escapade, especially from the side where he's, like, arriving at school in a flying car, it looks very, very James-ish, especially to Snape.
My question is, why was Snape tasked by McGonagall to look into this, or was he not tasked? Because,
well, by Dumbledore.
Yeah, but like, why Snape? Or is it because they suspect something sinister, dark magic-y could have happened, and then Snape might be a good candidate? Because I get that McGonagall's busy, so she's looking after sorting, so the head of house cannot be there. The headmaster can obviously not take time away from welcoming the students and all of that stuff. But wouldn't there have been other candidates?
I have to imagine Snape volunteered.
Oh, I disagree. I think there are no other candidates. I think, like, if Dumbledore is looking for, like, you know, underlings rather than just, like, helpful professors, like, Snape is the one he would turn to. Snape is the Order of the Phoenix member. So I feel like Snape is sort of the obvious choice here. Because, like, Snape is the one tasked with protecting Harry Potter. Like, obviously it's in McGonagall's job description too, but McGonagall's busy, so yeah. Like, who would you send if not Snape?
I mean, the other heads of houses.
Flitwick, or, yeah. Any of the other heads of houses, or...
I mean, definitely not Lockhart, but...
I mean, even... Yeah. No. I mean, like, maybe even like a Madame Pomfrey in case they're injured, or like I wouldn't send Filch because if there's magic involved, he can't do anything. But even Hagrid, send Hagrid. Like,
no, you need someone competent and intelligent. Come on.
Dumbledore thinks that Hagrid is competent and intelligent and tasks him with very significant...
he doesn't. He thinks Hagrid is trustworthy.
I'm not willing to go
and what's more
very
trustworthy a mission than finding Harry on the grounds of the school that he is groundskeeper of?
Yeah, exactly. This shows exactly what Dumbledore thinks of Hagrid. Being like, no, if there's actual trouble, let's have a real adult.
I think Hagrid equally might still be busy with the first years.
There's also that he has to take him across in the boats.
Oreo, well done diffusing that.
Yes. No, I still think that Snape would jump at the chance to potentially get Harry in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sticking by that. I think, McGonagall, you can't. Which one of you guys
Snape's
wants to go?
left.
And Snape's
like,
he's
I'm
like, done. I'm out.
Like, okay.
Let's go find him.
Yes, and also Snape is one of the only ones at that time who really understand why Harry needs to be protected. And
yeah, that's a good point.
Is more into the whole intel knowledge.
Yeah, because especially if you suspect like something nefarious is going on, which it's Harry Potter. I think you definitely want Snape on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, coming back to doing his job, you said that that was the first kind of attention-seeking thing that Harry did, kind of comparing him to James. And I agree. What I don't agree with is that Snape would see it that way. I think he would even see saving the Philosopher's or Sorcerer's Stone and then becoming a hero at the Great Hall at the end of year feast as attention-seeking. I don't think the actual intention of Harry's rule breaking was attention-seeking, but I don't think Snape cares about the intention. I think he cares about the attention that Harry gets with his antics.
And also, some of that is that, he wasn't there firsthand. I think another even earlier part is when Harry saves the Remembrall and gets chosen to be Seeker.
Yeah.
That Snape wasn't there for that, so he would hear it like secondhand, and by that time it was probably rumored through the whole school, and it probably was very far from what actually happened. So,
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I do think from the side, like, the stuff Harry's doing, like, I guess, like, the distinction is, like, it's not just for attention, right? Like, the Remembrall thing, like, he like, had a goal there, right? He was, like, trying to
but also for Snape, it's like the other side is Draco Malfoy. Who's Snape gonna side with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can spin that as, like, what, Harry was just showing off on a broom?
But Snape wasn't there, and if he hears stories from the Slytherins and that, they're not gonna be the truth.
No, but I imagine he also might hear from McGonagall what's going on. Especially if he goes to her, he's like, hey, Minerva, so, like, how's that whole objectively enforcing the rules and not allowing first years thing going for you? And she's like, but you don't understand. Like, your head of a student had Neville's Remembrall, and then Harry, like, flew and caught it, and it was a whole thing.
Yeah, but that still could be perceived as attention-seeking.
Yeah. And Snape would perceive it as attention-seeking. But you're right. Like this action with the car is the first time that Snape can actually use in front of others to be like, look, he's really just attention seeking. But I still think like all the other times he was still thinking the same thing.
Yeah, especially because Harry and Ron were like, oh, it'll be so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Sierra, you mentioned before about the Evening Prophet. So, like, I actually looked this up. So, like, the Evening Prophet is just the evening edition of the Daily Prophet, which is not regularly put out. Mm-hmm. Like, apparently, this was such big news that they had to rush out a special evening edition to report on it.
To be fair, I can understand that that's such big news because there was a flying car.
Yeah.
Someone just blatantly broke. Yeah.
See, and like, I honestly think more than the, like, breach of the statute, I think it's just the glamour of it all.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, look, like, the statute of secrecy gets broken, like, muggles notice something, and you take care of it. Like, that's that can be reported the next morning. Like, nothing about that screams now. But there's a flying car in Britain! Like, then, like, okay, readers are interested. I think it's, like, the sensational aspect of it that made them rush out the evening edition.
Yeah. Isn't one of the other times they do it is when Sirius escapes Azkaban? I think that's another time it potentially gets mentioned.
I don't think so. Like, the other mention off the top of my head is when Fudge is trying to throw Dumbledore in Azkaban, and he's like, oh, and if we're lucky, we can still make the evening edition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When the Ministry searches Malfoy Manor in Half-Blood Prince on Harry's tip-off, that's also in the Evening Prophet. Which I'm guessing is also, like, the salacious aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
The, like, respected wizard family, the Malfoys, who have fallen so far, have been searched by the Ministry of Magic. Yeah, it seems to me the Evening Prophet reports more on what's sensational than what's newsworthy, because, again,
it seems very
the goal is to sell
tabloidy.
papers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But with Harry's arrival, I realized this is like a book 2 and 6 parallel, because I mean we know that books 2 and 6 are pretty much like the same book. It's so ringy, but in both of them, Harry is arriving late at Hogwarts, and he is intercepted by Snape, who is of course being horribly nasty and miserable to him. So yes, I'm like, deja vu.
And I'm just joking, of course, but like, is being Snape, is Snape being nasty and miserable a ring? Because he is always nasty and miserable.
No, it's a constant.
Yeah.
Like, the ring is which circumstance he's being miserable and nasty in. But yes, good point. Luckily, in this case, like, Harry and Ron are also being nasty to him, so, turnabout's fair play.
Yeah, I think if I was saying, maybe he got sacked, everyone hates him, and then he was right behind me, I would, like, die on the spot. That would be horrifying. That would be the most horrifying thing that would have happened to me that night.
Really? Whereas, like, I would not be fussed really all that much. I'd be like, well, he knows he's not popular. He knows we hate him, so, like, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know, but that's not really, like, their like, thing at this point. Like, they're 12 years old. They've only known Snape for a year. They're not, like, in a position, especially Ron, is not, like, in a position to badmouth a professor to his face.
Well, but they didn't do it to his face. They were clearly talking behind his back.
Yeah, exactly. Which would be horrifying. A 12-year-old being like, the person I'm bad-mouthing, who has power over me, is standing right behind me. He already is known for having a miserable attitude, for not liking Gryffindors, for not liking me because of who I associate with. Like,
so you may as well live down to expectations.
I think that you're putting, like, an adult confidence level on a 12-year-old boy.
Listen, they just flew a flying car across the entire island of Great Britain.
And then crashed and got attacked and are now stranded outside.
I mean, no scheme is perfect. But I feel like if I were Ron, I'd be feeling kinda baller after the whole day. And be like, I said what I said.
I think I would be really scared. But then also I misread your notes because I that you would expire on the spot of Snape, like as if you were Snape and heard students talking about yourself. And I was like, I don't think he would be mortified. Snape would be proud hearing that his students don't like him, especially when it's Ron and Harry, because he doesn't want to be liked as a teacher.
Yes, I think he was 100% eavesdropping for a few minutes, and he's like, this is so flattering. Yeah. I think Snape enjoyed it.
And he enjoyed interrupting them at that time.
He is such a drama queen. Oh my god, Severus Snape. He waits for the perfect moment and he's like, or maybe. Dun dun dun. Listen. game recognizes game, and just the flair was impeccable.
See, that's why he's one of my favorite characters, because that's really not an easy job to always be such a drama queen.
Yeah. Honestly, these moments where I was like, you know what, I get it. I do enjoy him. But also, when he is reading them the riot act, there's a line where, like, Harry's like, how does he know this? And the narration says, this wasn't the first time Snape had given Harry the impression of being able to read minds. Which, of course, we find out later on that Snape can, in fact, read minds. So I'm once again curious about, like, the planning phase of this book. Like, do you guys think Joe had planned the whole, like, legitimacy angle this early on? That, like, you know, there would be mind reading and that Snape could do it? Like, you know, what sort of level of detail do you think she, like, had figured out at this juncture?
I think she was thinking about mind reading very early on, because the intent there of Snape and Harry's feeling that Snape knows what's going on is there, I think, in the first book already. I don't know how much, of course, was planned with legitimacy and occlumency, but I think Snape and Dumbledore being able to read their minds was there from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree with that. Like you say, I don't think she knew that there'd be a whole, like, legitimacy, occlumency, like, whole subplot. You know, unclear on that one. But I think she definitely knew mind reading was a thing, because later on in Chamber of Secrets, I think Dumbledore 100% reads Harry's mind. Like, when Dumbledore's like, so is there anything you want to tell me? And Harry just, like, thinks about everything he doesn't want to tell him. I think Dumbledore's absolutely reading his mind at that point. And, like, I go into this in my Dumbledore book in Chapter 2 in, like, quite a bit of detail. But yeah, that's my perspective on it.
I think also that mind reading is not such an out there thing in general, that, you know, it's a fairly common thing with fantasy and that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's that outlandish that she had at least the basics of it already in her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I think I kind of agree with Karoline that it's not necessarily that the whole, like, legitimacy angle and, like, all of the in-depth everything would be a thing, but I think there has to have been an element of being able to use magic to see into somebody's thoughts, like that, just as a basic concept. Makes sense that was planned early on. Because the other thing that I was just thinking about is that maybe instead of legitimacy, occlumency, there was just an element of Harry and Voldemort being connected through their minds, and that, like, Harry being able to see via the Horcrux connection could have potentially, or, like, just having a link to Voldemort, like, whether it was through the Horcruxes or through, you know, just, like, his scar in general, or their connection, or whatever the case may be, whatever she had planned at that point, that was, like, laying the groundwork for just mind reading in its simplest form is a thing in this world and, like, can happen. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I find it hard, like, because I find it hard to, like, think how much she may or may not have had planned for, like, endgame stuff at the very beginning. Because I remember, like, reading a bunch of things at the beginning of her releasing stuff that basically was like, yeah, I just wrote a book and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. But then later on, it's like, oh no, I had everything planned out. I'm like,
yeah, I was going to say, she's definitely not reliable, any of that.
I'm like, I don't know how much you actually had planned out. So I have my doubts. I have my doubts on, like, just how reliable of a source she is.
Completely unreliable.
So I don't,
because, like, we've seen so much about her, like, her, you know, her edits.
Right.
Like, you know, we heard about, like, you know, crashing into the lake and the merfolk. We've heard about, you know, the characters who disappeared, the characters who appeared. Like, we know that she didn't even know, like, you know, who was going to kill Sirius in Order of the Phoenix. Like, you know, I think she knew broad outlines. I think she knew, like, who was going to live, who was going to die, like, sort of, you know, that Horcruxes were a thing, but, like, yeah.
Who's the Half-Blood Prince?
Yeah. I still have my doubts about some of that.
Yeah, the specifics, not a chance. That's
why I think, because mind reading is not, like, it's not something that's only existing in Harry Potter. It's like even when we're fully introduced to it, Harry's like, oh, it's like mind reading instead. It's like, it's nothing like mind reading.
Yes, it's like reading the mind. It's nothing to do with mind reading.
Yeah. So, you know, basic forms of it, I'm like, yeah, it's not really out there. It's very believable as a reader of fantasy that you're like, yeah, this exists elsewhere. I have encountered this. I can absolutely believe it.
Yeah. But no, Snape does not... Well, actually, Snape might read his mind, but more specifically, Snape reads the papers.
Yes. And then, you know, he goes and he gets McGonagall and Dumbledore, who are the ones with the great pleasure of determining their punishment, or if they're going to be expelled, which I think is great. And I thought it was interesting, the contrast just of each of the adults' responses when confronting the boys with the whole situation. Like, Snape is obviously loving this. But he's livid, but he's also loving this possible chance to, like, get rid of these pains in his side. And then McGonagall, she's, like, practical, slightly comforting, but is definitely very angry. Like, she lights the fire, which is like, let's comfort this situation a little bit, but then, and allows them to explain, but then, like, also points out the obvious. They could have sent an owl. They clearly didn't think. Which is great.
The allowing them to explain thing, that's, like, a very big contrast, because Snape literally does not let them get a sentence out. They're like, well, it was the silence! Well, the Whomping Willow, silence!
It's the same of the hearing later in Order, when Harry tries to explain why.
Yes, which, God, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, and then Dumbledore, just the ultimate disappointed parent, just calmly... explain why you did this. Like, Irvin, you've been saying things that you very much, like, vibe with throughout the chapter. This sentence is what I most connect with, which is probably very upsetting, but just it would have been better if he had shouted. Harry hated the disappointment in his voice. For some reason, he was unable to look Dumbledore in the eyes and spoke instead to his knees. Like, that is how I was as a child. Like, if I ever, like, got the hint that I was in trouble or whatever, if someone just was like, why did you do this? I would be like, ah! Like, that would be like the end for me. Like, I would be devastated.
Yeah. I'm with you,
like,
Sierra.
I did not need a lot of punishment as a child. Like, I just was, like, in fear of disappointing adults. And so this, like, very much, I was like, I get you, my dude. I'm with you. That would be awful.
Yeah. There is also an interesting moment when McGonagall shows up to light the fire, and she raises her wand, and Harry and Ron both flinched. And I was like, what did they think was going to happen?
It's like a trauma response right there.
I mean, yes, suppose they did just get whomped by a tree, but, like...
They got whomped by a tree, but also, like, the last time that Harry had a professor point his wand at him was Quirrell.
Touche. Yeah, I think I'm more surprised by Ron's response. Because Harry's like, oh my god, are they gonna, like, beat me with wood? What's wood? But, like, Ron, like, I don't think the Weasley household was one where corporal punishment was, well...
No, but he also grew up with Fred and George.
Now we do know that corporal punishment is something that happens in the Weasley household.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, literally, as I was saying it, I was like, no, that does happen.
And
but, like...
I can imagine Molly, like... I can't imagine her being, like, cruel, but I can imagine her smacking the kids, like, kind of in action.
Upside the head with a newspaper.
Yes. Kind of like this.
Bop him on the nose. Bad. Bad dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, we know that after one such incident, Fred's left buttock was never the same.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. Very true.
But yeah, so all three adults read them the riot act. And again, it's one of those things where it's, like, valuable to consider, like, you know, this perspective on this. So let us note that Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape all leave the welcome feast to deal with two errant 12-year-olds.
Well, arguably, Snape never was at the welcome feast.
Right, exactly. Like, Snape was never there, but the headmaster and deputy headmistress peace out to deal with it.
Which probably was slightly distressing to the Slytherins, that they're like, our head of house seems to not be here. Was something going on? And the rest of school was like, Snape's not here. Let's celebrate.
Yeah, be like, woo, party! But yeah, no, I think it's definitely the Harry Potter effect.
Yeah.
Because it's not every student who would merit quite such a fuss.
It's also not every student that would arrive in a flying car.
I think there's a handful who would. Like, you know, I'm picturing if, like, you know, Fred and George arrive in the flying car, right? Like, I think, like, you know, McGonagall heads them off and, like, you know, has them eat sandwiches and give detention, but I don't think, like, you know, the headmaster and his underlings have to, like, show up and read them the riot act in that scenario.
Is generally something I picked up on recently when I was rereading the books. People make mentions to they have been in Dumbledore's office. Like, random people. I think Zach Smith is one of them. And it's just sort of curious, like, what is the reason that they had to be in Dumbledore's office? Like, is it because they got into so much trouble that it was raised with the headmaster? But then also, what would it be? Or is there just other, more, like, benign reasons for it? But people mention that they've been to the headmaster during the school year, when I'm like, oh, so why would you have reasons to interact with Dumbledore?
Yeah.
But also Dumbledore uses school children to carry out his messages.
Yes, absolutely.
And might even, maybe there's a middle ground between, like, carrying messages and carrying out killing Voldemort. So maybe there's smaller errands that he lets other kids run.
But that's a Half-Blood Prince thing. So I think that, like, you know, the kids bringing notes to Harry, I think that's very intentional on Dumbledore's side. I think he's sort of trying to, like, build Harry up as the, like, well, Harry Potter, you know, totally not the chosen one. I, Albus Dumbledore, have some enigmatic messages that need to go directly to Harry Potter right now. So why don't you, you know, run along and give him that? I think that it very much, like, that's Dumbledore trying to, like, you know, send a message by doing that. So because we don't see that before Half-Blood Prince.
No.
But also, Dumbledore doesn't need to be in direct communication with Harry until then.
Yeah, and I don't think he has any reasons to be with any student in any direct communication. I mean,
Dumbledore has better ways of, like, sending messages to Harry than, like, sending students on errands.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the only students that perhaps Dumbledore would need to be in contact with would be, like, head boy and head girl.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, I'm very much team Dumbledore does not run the school. That's all Minerva, so all the admin-y thing, he's like, yeah, I'm bored with it. Let's do something interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And then we, which is kind of like, he's come in, he has done what he needs to do. He's leaving them to McGonagall, and then we get iconic Dumbledore, come Severus. There's a delicious looking custard tart I want to sample.
Yeah.
Don't get in the way of Dumbledore and his treats. Like, he's like, I'm done with this. My work here is done. Let us go. Away to the feast.
Wait, maybe Dumbledore went because he's like, so Snape still hasn't come back. Minerva's now also at the scene. Why is Snape still not coming back? I'll fetch Snape and also make Ron and Harry realize that they were definitely very wrong here.
Sarah, I agree with you that Dumbledore and his suites have a very powerful connection. But, you know, if he's into this delicious-looking custard tart, I think the real tart Dumbledore wants to sample is Gellert.
Okay. Moving on.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I thought you didn't like Fantastic Beasts. Sorry, we're definitely moving on.
You're right, I don't. But Dumbledore canonically wants to sample that tart as of Deathly Hallows.
Sorry, I regret it so much that I brought it back to that.
Yeah, well, so they leave, and then Harry knows exactly how to play for McGonagall, like play to McGonagall's weaknesses for her house pride. Excellent work, my boy. The term hadn't started yet when we broke the rules, so we shouldn't have to take house points, right?
Semantics for days. And this actually, it has like a really cool callback at the end of the book, where Harry once again manipulates McGonagall to avoid punishment when he's, visiting Hermione at the hospital.
Oh yeah, that's genius.
Yep. And actually, like, once you brought it up, it's interesting because I think this is the earliest we ever see Harry attempting to manipulate an adult in the books. Like, because I was trying to think, like, does it happen earlier? And even with Hagrid and Sorcerer's Stone, it's always been Hermione who flatters him into spilling his various secrets. She's like, come on, Hagrid, you know everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. Who did Dumbledore trust except you? But for Harry, this is a new thing. And I was like, look at our boy growing up and learning to manipulate people.
Well, it's because the second book, he realizes how close he is to Tom Riddle, right?
I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's always interesting to, look back on these earlier books where it's like, oh, this is, a thing that these characters do all the time. Mm. But it's the first time they did it.
Yeah.
I really like that.
True. That's very nice.
You know what else I'd really like? As we've been recording for hours and I haven't had lunch? a plate of refilling sandwiches.
That would be amazing. I would eat too many sandwiches. I need to know, once again, Sierra has questions. I feel like that's the theme of this episode. Once again, Sierra has questions. Can the plate predict what kind I want? Can I tell the plate what kind of sandwiches do I want? Is it going to give me a bunch of variety? Because if this is the case, then I am in, and I would like 5 of them, please. Can you tell that I'm hungry?
Why do you need 5 if it refills? Are you not just being greedy now?
But here's the thing. It depends on the answers to my questions. Because if it can only refill one type of sandwich, then I need 5 different types of sandwich. And then I can
Still sounds greedy to me.
Yeah. Sierra, what are the 5 types of sandwich you want infinitely refilled?
Maybe I'm hosting a party and I need 5 of them out on the table so that I don't have to make all of these individual sandwiches, because let me tell you, that's time consuming.
Mm-hmm. And is that the reason why they don't install elevators but have all those horrible and long stairs? Because otherwise the kids would be terribly obese.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, with all the food that they have all the time on those giant feast tables, yes.
And 0 PE classes.
Yeah, exactly. The only exercise
classes.
is flying.
Yeah, but that's
which
down.
Sure, thighs. Good, broom thighs, as some fanfics have referred to them as.
Yes, the Quidditch muscles.
But not every kid is continuing to take flying lessons and
yeah,
or
we don't even
Quidditch.
know how long that really takes, because Harry only takes it for 1 lesson. Right. And that's not even a full lesson.
Yeah.
Harry
has what,
it
like
for like
10 minutes of a flying lesson?
Yes, and then they leave and go back to the common room after they've eaten their fill from the sandwiches. And I love the classic, what happened between you and Professor Quirrell down in the chamber is a complete secret. So naturally the whole school knows. All of Gryffindor is just thrilled, them coming in by a flying car, crashing into the Whomping Willow, almost getting expelled. They all know everything already. I can see, okay, sure. they arrive via flying car. If they get the evening profit, if their parents send it to them, or one copy gets around and is circulated, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you only need, like, one student out of hundreds to, like, read the evening profit, and, like, there you are.
But then everybody knows that they crashed into the Whomping Willow, which, like, is something that Snape went and discovered on the grounds by himself. And then that they almost got expelled, which I guess they could, like, assume, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that one is just assumption.
That one's just assumption. But, like, I just love that everybody's like, yeah, we know all about this thing that just happened an hour ago, and we know all the details, even though only 2 of you were there. Which,
I mean, in fairness, that is how the communities of like this of teenagers work.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was in this community in the Poconos for the last couple weeks, and, like, it's mostly teenagers hanging out there. And as I swim in the pool lifeguarded by teenagers, I get all the gossip. And, like, literally Friday night, like, they were going to the ball field, and they, like, drove by a guy and a girl walking together. Literally, by the time we drove back half an hour later, the entire community was buzzing. And, I mean, admittedly, we have smartphones, but news travels fast. Mm-hmm. What I love is that they wanted the epic entrance, and they do kind of get it, because everyone except Hermione and Percy thinks it's just the coolest thing. And, I mean, let's be honest, I would also think it's the coolest thing.
This is Gryffindor house.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, that's also true.
Yeah, and even when they, like, retreat up to the common room because, like, Percy's kind of, like, beelining for them, even, like, Seamus and Dean and Neville all follow them in. They're all like, amazing. Which is, I think, just the pep up that they needed. Harry couldn't help
What was it? Unbelievable, beamed Seamus. Cool, said Dean. Amazing, said Neville, awestruck.
Harry couldn't help it. He grinned too. And then that's the end of the chapter, which I think that's a great, like, last line of a chapter. It makes you feel, like, very settled.
Right. And like, it's nice that we go on the journey where, like, he starts off, like, really bummed that summer vacation is ending, and then he ends at Hogwarts and happy. Mm-hmm. It's all very nice and wholesome. But, so, you brought this up earlier, like, you know, what Molly and Arthur must have been thinking, like, when they, you know, get off, like, are stuck at the platform. And I just wanted to talk about sort of, like, not what's in the chapter, but what's happening off screen. 'Cause, like, you gotta wonder what on earth everyone is thinking about when, like, there's no Harry Potter, I mean, or Ron, but, like, Harry Potter specifically on the Hogwarts Express. 'Cause, like, you have Molly and Arthur stuck on the platform, and they're like, wait, what? We had 2 other kids behind us. Where are the other 2 kids? And then they, like, get out, God knows when, and the car is gone. And then Dumbledore not knowing where Harry Potter is, and he's like, oh, crap. He's like, what's Voldemort up to now? But, like, the one perspective that I think, like, would perhaps be the most upset is actually Hermione, who's, like, on the Hogwarts Express without her 2 besties.
Yes, and my heart breaks for her so much. Like, she might have thought they didn't want to sit with her, and, like, only after searching for the whole train, mind you, with all the other kids seeing her being left alone there, she then would have realized they were not there anymore. And then I thought maybe I'm not giving her enough credit, and she would just enjoyed a nice book and a quiet train ride, but I don't know.
Well, and, like, you post this and I was like, come on, she knows better. But, like, again, it's also new, right? Like, because, like, they've been friends, I mean, less than a year. Like, they only became friends last Halloween. And, like, I don't know about you guys, but, like, you know, on the last day of classes, like, you swear everlasting friendship, and you're like, oh my God, we're gonna be in each other's lives, and we're gonna hang out all the time. And then, like, next school year begins, and you're just like, hey, sup? Like, you know, as you go to different classes in the hallways. So, like, I could definitely see her, like, spiraling a bit on this.
Yeah, I had the same thought. At first I was like, she would have just been annoyed at them. But then I thought, no, that's Hermione in book 5 or 6. But Hermione in book 2, for the first time having 2 good friends that don't, like, they are not friends from the beginning of the first school year. It only kind of starts in the middle of it. And she could have probably thought, oh, they are too cool for me, or they don't want to be friends with me anymore. So yeah, I think she might be sad, and her mind might be racing there.
Yeah. Especially because, like, she was writing to Harry all summer with no response.
Yeah. True.
Like,
yeah.
I wonder if this explains why she was so snappish with them, like, you know, when they arrived and even the next morning. Like, I think her nerves were, like, a little bit shot, and, like, you know, she had a lot of fights with them in her mind while she was on the train.
This is also a time where Hermione still spends time with her family and doesn't just spend all the holidays with the Weasleys.
Yeah.
What a time.
And then later on, she's just like, I have parents. I should mention them every once in a while.
Yeah.
I write them birthday
like, you know,
cards.
sort of name drop, being like, oh yeah, my parents. Those guys. And I think with this kind of a chapter, there can only be one sponsor for us. So this chapter is definitely going to be sponsored by the Ford Company, who clearly created the most iconic car in all of fantasy literature. And I'm saying, Ford, hit us up. Like, you could definitely afford a lucrative sponsorship here at the Three Broomsticks.
Yeah, you go buy us some drinks.
Yes.
Right? I'm like, listen, we're not asking for free cars, because, like, what would Aureo and I do with them?
Yeah, exactly.
But, like, you know...
Yeah, you can buy us some drinks.
Right? And, like, I've lost track of the number of, like, conventions and, like, Harry Potter festivals where there's just, like, a turquoise Ford Anglia somewhere to take pictures with. Like, it really is, it's such a wonderful, like, visual car.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is. Well, hey, Irvin.
Yeah, what's up?
What is playing on the pub's jukebox today? I have to know.
Well... For a chapter called The Whomping Willow, it, of course, had to be a song by the legendary classic Wizard Rock band, The Whomping Willows, who is one of, like, the true OGs of Wizard Rock. And, I mean, I could go for most of their discography, but I think it has to be their song called Your Flying Car, which is where he's like, hey, Harry, Ron, maybe don't hit me with a flying car. So, let's give that a listen.
Harry, oh, Harry Potter, I thought you were a little bit smarter. Concentrate just a little bit harder when you're riding in your flying car. Oh, Weasley, oh, Ronald Weasley, I'd like to put a curse on your whole family. You insulted my dignity when you hit me with your flying car. I know you were just fooling around, but at least have the wherewithal to land on the ground. I know it's fun and games to you, but the Whomping Willow has feelings too.
All right. And with that, Karoline, we just have to say thank you so much for visiting us here at the Three Broomsticks. It's been such a joy having you here.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to be here. Really, always such a great time.
Yeah, I mean, sort of ever since we met 2 years ago in Berlin, I was like, we gotta do a podcast together one of these days. So I'm very glad it finally happened for us.
Yes, and it's not even midnight here.
Well, I was going to say we started much earlier, but did we? Like, I feel like when we met at what, like 3 o'clock and partied at midnight?
Yeah, something like that.
As one does.
Yeah, but, well, I, now that you mentioned Berlin, I always have a mandatory shout out to my cousin, Margarete, who's also there during that night, and who, it's kind of a tradition now that every time one of us is on a Harry Potter podcast, we just shout each other out. So, hi, Margarete.
Love that. I think we're having Margarita on in a few episodes, so she'll be able to shout you out like that.
A little sneak peek into the future.
Yup. Ooh. Yeah. Karoline, do you want to plug anything else besides your cousin? Anything online? Where can listeners follow you?
I'm not really that much online on social media anymore, but I do think I will finally get on Patreon and join you there. So then you'll find me there on, I think my name is Phoenix Feather Goes Whoosh.
Love that.
And yeah, nothing else to plug besides my cousin.
That's fair enough.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And talking of Patreon, huge thanks again to Christian Richardson, who bought us this round of drinks at the Three Broomsticks. And I think we can agree they were very delicious drinks.
Mm-hmm. They were. You know what? Like, Harry and Ron would have been jealous of us, too, when they were up there with toffees in their pumpkins.
Indeed. And if you'd like to buy us the next round, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. And don't forget, you can also always help us by rating and reviewing our show. Tell your friends about our show. Just, spread the word, because there's always more space at the Three Broomsticks for more Harry Potter fans.
We're like the Fort Anglia. We're bigger on the inside.
And if you, unlike Karoline, are on social media, you can also find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Does that still exist? Apparently. Our assorted handles and our email address can be found in the episode description or on our website. And this can be found at 3broomstickspod.com with the 3 spelled out. And on our website, you can join the discussion. Make sure that you rival the comments of episode 39. We can get up their numbers, I'm sure. You can also submit a topic. Let us know what we should be talking about next. And also all the links to all the essays that usually come from Irvin and Sophia, because I think no one else ever contributes to that, can always be found on the website as well. And give us a click on the website.
And the next time that we meet at the Three Broomsticks, we are very excited. We'll be discussing Hogwarts Legacy with one of its developers will be on with us. So that is very, very exciting. So tune in next time to hear all about that. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been Sierra.
I've been Aureo.
And I'm Irvin. Thanks for listening. Good luck in your new school year. And we'll see you next time in the Three Broomsticks. Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here. Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here. Of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by The Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Fantastico.
Woo! All right. And under 3 hours. Look at that.
Great.
Karoline, should we keep going?
Next episode. Right away.